Let's hit that live button. Okay, so should be going live now. So for everyone watching, let me know if you can hear me okay, if everything looks okay, if you can hear Brandon, who is back. We had a little bit of break. You were having a good time elsewhere, but Brandon, WhataboutNodnarb is back.
Yeah, I have returned again. I'm gone a lot these days. I just do a lot of things on the weekends now. I was in I was gonna say Florida. I don't know why. I guess because I was at the beach. I was at a beach house like 2 hours down south from Houston. And we went to the beach. It was fine. Well, the cooler thing we did was we went ghost hunting in an old prison, the second longest running prison in Texas. But it's shut down now. And we went in there, and we was like real life Phasmophobia. Like if you've seen Phasmophobia, that's like what it was. We had K2 scanners and EMF, well the K2 EMF, and then we had thermal cameras and all kinds of stuff. It was just like playing the game.
That is fascinating. Yeah, so Brandon was ghost hunting.
Yeah.
But yeah, guys, again, just let me know if everything looks and sounds okay. I want to make sure, because we were having some audio issues and other things. I haven't even told Brandon yet. Like, there was things with my computer in terms of like where I was getting audio from. So I just let me know if you can hear me, if you can hear Brandon, if you can hear Gormott music from Xenoblade too. So let me know if that's in the background. And let me know if everything just looks okay. But for those who are unaware, this is a Nintendo podcast we do every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern time. We do a lot of Q&A. we go over the topics eventually, and it's usually a good time. Eventually, I think that honestly is the best way I could have worded that, because eventually is definitely what goes down here, because I haven't even talked about the topics yet. And then when we actually get to the topics, it might be an hour from now. Who knows? We'll see. But the basic topics for tonight is just we're going to be talking about rumors. Like, has there been news? Sure. If you guys ask me about the news, I'll tell you what I think. But has there been anything like revelatory that's like it kind of depends on what you cover. There is the whole Giga Leak thing with like some old Nintendo stuff. There were like those old Wiimotes and things like that, which is fascinating. But it doesn't change anything really. It's just kind of like a neat thing to see. But in terms of like information for what's to come in the future, we got some rumors from Marco Maro on Twitter, who I'm not gonna pretend has like the best track record, but there have been some things, and really I just want to like take this as an opportunity to kind of go over those rumors and tell you what I think. Let Brandon kind of talk about it as well, and just make sense of it. Like, even if it's bogus, right? We're gonna tell you like what about that could be true and if it is true. And we're also going to talk about Samus Hunter, who I take with more credibility than Marco Maro as well. So we're just basically talking about that, doing Q&A, speculating on what's going on, making sense of it, deciding what is logical, what could actually be happening, what's bogus. So that's pretty much the general sort of plan for the evening. What do you think, Brandon?
Sounds good to me.
Cool. And Brandon, I know because you haven't been able to be on the podcast recently, that you want to get your thoughts out on Steam Deck. So we're going to talk about that too in a moment, just to kind of get things started. But first, just kind of let me check in with the chat here, and then we'll get the ball rolling. I see here, Taker610 said, new NVIDIA Lovelace rumors just in time for the podcast. Super Switch in 2022. All right, I don't know what the Lovelace rumors are, but interesting. The Yellow Kazoo, hello there. Birdman, hello there. Thanks for modding, my friends. DE Fox, hello there. Actually, I want to extend a thank you to DE Fox, because DE Fox has been DMing me on Twitter, keeping me in the loop with some of the rumors that have been coming from Marco Maro and Samus Hunter. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it. And also thank you for modding. Jason Fulton, are we playing Breath of the Wild 2 by July 2022? That is a question that I have an answer to. Obviously, I don't know for a fact, but my answer is no, unless Nintendo releases a demo, which is also no. So I'll tell you, I think it's holiday 2022. Like, that's it. Now, maybe I'm mistaken, right? And maybe Nintendo has this big plan to release the Switch Pro or whatever you want to call it with Breath of the Wild 2, so they put it in for a summer release. But I don't really expect that at all. I think Breath of the Wild 2 is a holiday release for 2022 at this point, but I'd love to be wrong.
I think it would be kind of ridiculous to expect that not only would Zelda come out in the summer, but it also come against with the Switch Pro when they just released an OLED version.
Right. So I guess the reason why I bring up the Switch Pro is that the only way I can see Breath of the Wild 2 coming out by the summer is because Nintendo has a piece of hardware that they want to launch with it, right? But to your point, I don't see a piece of hardware like that coming out by the summer. So I don't see those things happening. Now, there has been speculation beforehand that Breath of the Wild 2 would come out for March 2022. And again, they've been developing this game since the end of 2017. And it's supposed to be based off the Breath of the Wild engine and all of these things. So you would think that it's far along. But there's just so many other variables that it's hard to pinpoint it all down. COVID likely delayed things by a year or maybe more. So because of that, it's not coming out as soon as we would have liked. And I just feel like if it was really coming out for March 2022, we would know more about it already. Yeah. So yeah, I doubt it. Like, for example, if we go back to Breath of the Wild 1, we knew a lot more about that game, by this point. Like, okay, let me
that E3 that year before it released was just like blowout. a big huge blowout. It's like a massive amount.
We knew the title. We knew how the game played.
Yeah, we don't even know the title. We didn't get even a little bit of treehouse footage of it. Nothing.
Yeah,
just
so
a trailer.
It just seems like the timeline for this, we're not there. We're not on the same sort of timeline. If anything, I would say, I'm trying to think. I mean, we're not that far off, right? It has a release date, 2022. We just, March just doesn't seem like it's it. But moving on. Justin Basil, hit the like button. Thank you for pointing that out. Yes, guys, hit the like button. I would appreciate it. It would get more people in the stream. It would get the ball rolling. I would appreciate that. iSonic, hello. Nishan Kelkar, hello there. David Haney, good day. Looks like everyone's saying that things are looking and sounding okay. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you, Game Walkthroughs. Seahawks 24 rule. The music is very low, but everything sounds fine. Yeah, I intentionally have it low just because I don't want it to kind of get in the way of the discussion too much, right? So, but I mean, if it's audible, then I mean, it's probably the way it always is. So, yeah. Skyward HD. Let's see. Justin Basil saying Skyward Sword HD looks and plays great. Yeah, no, I'm really enjoying Skyward Sword HD. I think there are actually some legitimate enhancements there. The game is I'm enjoying it. I'm in the Ancient Cistern right now, which is like the 4th dungeon in the game. So I'm about half-ish way, right? Like around there, maybe a little bit before halfway. I'm around there, and it's great. I'm enjoying it very much. Ronnie Fazio, hello. Game Walkthroughs added me. When do you think we will see the next big 3D Mario? That's a great question because it's tough because there's a few factors to sort of consider. So maybe you're aware we've been talking about Donkey Kong for quite a while already, and I very much believe there is a new Donkey Kong coming. Now, this new Donkey Kong game, at one point it was rumored that it was being developed by the Mario Odyssey team. So if this new Donkey Kong game is being developed by the Mario Odyssey team and it hasn't even been announced yet officially, and it's probably not. This Donkey Kong game is probably coming out next year. That's sort of like the belief right now. That doesn't. It's not factual. Not 100% necessarily going to be the case. Like the Donkey Kong game could be real and it comes out even later than that. But right now the belief by many is it comes out next year, right? So let's say that's the case, and it is made by the Mario Odyssey team. Then when's the next 3D Mario? Hard to say. Now, this Donkey Kong game might not be a full-scale 3D game. It may not have required as many resources. It may not have taken as much time. Maybe they're working on multiple projects at once. And if that's the case, you know, they could still have a 3D Mario that's well into development. In fact, I'm willing to bet that there is a 3D Mario that is very much well into development. And there could be something that they could show off if they wanted to. And then the other consideration here is that this Donkey Kong project maybe has had some help from the Mario team, because that same Mario team also has a history working on Donkey Kong already. So there could be something there, and obviously they have a lot of strength in platforming with both 3D and 2D elements. But there's still, you know, the Mario team is still mostly working on Mario. Like, that's all possible, right? But the point is that this Donkey Kong thing can kind of impact how long it may take. We usually get at least one big 3D Mario per platform, and we have Super Mario Odyssey. That came out 2017. And we didn't get any paid DLC for that, so they didn't really focus too much on like creating new maps or anything like that. We just got that free sort of Luigi stuff with the balloon trials. So, you know, maybe they were thinking about doing DLC and they just decided to save it and focus on the next big game. So, you know, maybe we see an announcement for the next Mario next year. Like, that's not out of the question. But based off how the lineup is looking right now, though, I don't think we need a 3D Mario next year. And as we go through the discussion, I think a lot of you will probably agree with me there. Brandon, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't think we need a new Mario next year, just because, you know, it was cool back in 2017 when we got Zelda beginning of the year and then Mario at the end. But I think next year we'll probably get Zelda at the end, and I don't see them putting Mario at the beginning just because we probably would have known about that already.
Right.
So it doesn't seem like there's really a good place for Mario to fit in there.
So, yeah.
Although it would be hype as hell if they got Mario and Zelda at the end of the year, but that's not going to happen.
There's a lot of games.
They're not going to put their two biggest IP like right in the same. They would spread that out, you know.
Maybe.
They don't come out with a big 3D Mario every year. You know?
I could see them coming out 2 months apart from each other. I don't think that's impossible, but there's just a lot of projects that I think we could be seeing coming out next year. I wouldn't put Mario right at the forefront of that. Also, consider this. 2022 is going to be the 5th year for Switch. Normally, Nintendo systems last about 5 years. There's some variation there. Wii U lasted 4, for example, right? Game Boy Advance lasted 4, for example. And I think Wii and DS technically went on for like 6+, but the Wii was dead after 4. It's weird because the Wii had strong software between 2006 and 2010, and then 2011 it was just all dead, and then at the very end they had Skyward Sword. And Skyward Sword's a strong release, but basically the Wii had barely any support from Nintendo until Skyward Sword. And there may be a couple things there, but it was definitely weaker than previous years. Yeah, you're right. 1 year too long for sure. So, I mean, but to kind of go back to the question game walkthroughs, when do you think we'll see the next big 3D Mario? I think conceivably we could get a tease for it next year, but I'm thinking 2023. So my reason, and maybe it takes longer than that, right? But my reasoning for that is because I think that this Mario game is well into development, right? Maybe some ideas and concepts trickled into Bowser's Fury, which is, you know, that little additional Mario adventure in 3D World Deluxe. We technically have 2 like 3D Mario games already on Switch, right? Even though one's maybe more like a 1.25 or something, but it is something, you know? But my point is I do think that they are well into development for it. And I think at this point, maybe Nintendo's thinking about, okay, when is it time to launch their next system? They're going to need something to push that, right? And Brandon, as you alluded to earlier, based off how things are going, we're skeptical that there is a Switch revision coming out next year. Right, like it could happen. Right, it could. It it very well could. But is it going to be a more expensive, more powerful version coming out next year, just a year removed from Switch OLED? I'm not sure about that. Breath of the Wild 2 would be an ideal sort of launch game for a Switch revision, but if the timing doesn't check out, the timing doesn't check out. So I feel like Nintendo's going to want to have something ready for that. Maybe that's when we see the next Mario Kart. Maybe that's when we see the next big 3D Mario. And I think 2023 could be that year where we see the next sort of big release from Nintendo in terms of hardware. And maybe it's not like a straight up next gen system. Maybe it's like a little bit of a hybrid situation where it's a revision, but still also next gen at the same time. Like there has been a blurring of the lines with hardware lately, and we may see something like that. So kind of right now, that's sort of my speculation. It's not super solid. It's very fluid. As evidence sort of presents itself, my opinion will change, right? But right now, that's what I'm sort of thinking. I'm not really ready to... I mean, I'll take 3D Mario as soon as I can get it, but I just don't. I think 2023 is probably the earliest we see it.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, let's continue on here. Super Chris, hello there. Thank you for modding, my friend. Jason Fulton. Oh, I think it's coming March 2020 on the 5-year anniversary, but I'm basing that purely on hope dreams. Hope and dreams, you know, that is a starting point for beautiful, beautiful things. But I don't know about Breath of the Wild 2 coming out March 2022. I wanted it as soon as possible, right? I wanted it this year. I wanted it last year. But
yeah.
Oh well. Robbie
I want
Rye.
it when it's done. I want it when it's ready.
When it's ready. Yeah, so it's the best game it can possibly be. Robbie Rye, have you completed Skyward Sword HD? No, I'm in the Ancient Cistern. The Best Cowboy Cad Bane 64. Hello. Any Pokemon Diamond and Pearl Remake and Legend Arceus trailer rumors yet? I'm tired of waiting. I'm tired of waiting as well. It has been way longer than I expected for us to get information on these games. Like, everyone expected information on these games before E3. Why? Because that's literally how it's been every single year except for the pandemic year. What's different this year? Well, there's this thing called Pokemon Unite. You may have heard of it. It came out this week. It's made by Tencent Games, a big sort of Chinese developer. There's a lot of money involved with this. There's a lot of potential money to be made here. There's marketing here. I think what's going on is that Pokemon Company is letting Pokemon Unite sort of take the spotlight for Pokemon fans right now, and they're focusing on marketing and pushing that. And then once that dies down, we will start getting Pokemon news. Does that mean next week or this week? I guess that maybe, but it also may be a few more weeks from this point. But I do still kind of strongly believe that we will get news on these games by the end of the summer. Because, well, one, we already have hard release dates for them. So when I say hard release dates, like we know the specific day that they are coming out in the month. I forget the actual dates, like what, November? I'll look it up real quick, but Brian, you understand my point. The fact that we have specific dates for them means that they're coming along. Like, they wouldn't put specific release dates if they didn't expect them to come out. So yeah, Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl is coming November 19th, and then Legends Arceus is sometime in January. I don't remember the day. I'm sorry. January 28th, 2022. So the fact that we have specific release dates for them means that they already kind of know where they're at. They're far along enough that they're confident that they're going to hit that specific day. And we already have the official box art for them too. Like, these games are nearing completion. So they're coming out when they are saying they are coming out. In other words, news has to happen sooner than later because they're just a few months away. They have to start talking about them soon. I think it just comes down to the Pokemon Unite situation and them sort of waiting. You could also chalk it up a little bit to the COVID situation and how E3 was different this year and how Pokemon Company wants to sort of share their information separate from Nintendo. Maybe they just really wanted to space all of that out, right? Because we got a lot of stuff recently. Like, there was a whole E3 stuff, then there was Switch OLED just a few weeks later. Now we have Pokemon Unite coming out. So, maybe they just want to wait for the right time to sort of build that all up and market it. So a couple weeks from now, I wouldn't be shocked. I actually kind of expect that we'll start getting news. Brandon, I know you don't care about Pokemon, so I'm just gonna...
Nah, super.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll be excited if Arceus looks good, then maybe.
Okay.
Otherwise, I
Yeah.
don't care.
Yeah, but I'll say that Pokemon Unite, I tried it today, and the presentation is pretty nice. The game seems to play fine. I think it's something I would actually enjoy playing with friends. I do kind of like the costumes and stuff. There is certainly a little bit of wonky things here and there, but you know, they're gonna update as the game progresses. It's a free-to-play game, so you can download for free on the Switch eShop. Play. You don't have to pay for anything, and it's fun for what it is, for sure. I don't know if I'm gonna get addicted to it and play it all the time. I think a lot of that will come down to me if there are people that I want to play the game with. But you know, it's interesting. So you know, try it out, guys. It's free.
I've been watching Sean play that over at Mono 64 on Twitch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what do you think of it so far?
And it looks fun. I mean, yeah, he's been having a good time. So I think the graphics look nice and clean.
Yeah,
it's not like anything ridiculous, but looks good.
For sure.
So, I don't know, it looks fun. I think they just need, you know, more time for people to get used to the game and release like more maps. Because I think they only have 2 maps so far.
I don't know. I did like the tutorial stuff, and I did 1 online match.
Oh yeah, you didn't play much.
Yeah, but I'm curious to see like how because it's free to play and it's not pay to win. Like I don't think you get a strategic advantage with money, but you can get more characters with money. So
I think you can also buy like
costumes and accessories.
I think you can buy upgrades for like your items, like your is there actually a little bit of a pay to win going on there?
There's
a pay to have a bit of an advantage.
Oh.
I don't think it's enough to where it's like you'll instantly be way better.
So I wasn't necessarily upset when I saw that you could buy certain characters, because I wouldn't assume that one character is inherently better than another, but it is maybe like different, right? But I mean, you could argue that's kind of like getting DLC in like Smash Brothers almost, you know. So it is a weird situation, but I'm also not like super into Pokemon Unite yet, so I'm not gonna raise any pitchforks or torches. So we'll see how things pan out, but it's at least an interesting little thing that you can try out for free. So like you can play everything for free, and you can still earn points and gold to buy everything.
Yeah, you earn stuff pretty quickly.
Yeah. Like I got 3,000 coins, and I told you what I did. I did the tutorial and 1 online match. So, and with 3,000, you can almost buy a character at that point and a few other stuff.
I think characters like typically 8,000 to 10,000 from what I've seen.
So and then you still can unlock others just by playing the game. So it's not like the only things you get are by buying. You are given things. You're rewarded different items and Pokemon to play with. But moving on. Heat of Silverlight. I wish Zelda would come out by March 2022. We all do. We all want it as soon as possible. Yeah. Jake Veglia. I'm playing Fire Emblem Three Houses while listening to you in the background. I was wondering where your favorite house and unit is from the game. Mine personally are Black Eagles and Ferdinand. So it's been a little bit since I played Three Houses. Last time I played it when it came out. I only did 1 campaign, but I think I also went with the Black Eagles. That was with what's her name? Because there's 3, right? There's Cloud, Dimitri.
Yeah, Dimitri, I think.
And then the girl, which is my favorite one, I can't remember her name.
Edelgard?
Edelgard, thank you. Yeah, Edelgard. I was a fan of Edelgard, actually. But in terms of like the side characters, I'm trying to remember. What side character?
With Dimitri or whoever. I don't know, man. I played 20 hours of that game. I was like, this intro, it felt like the entire 20 hours was just the intro to the game. It was so slow. Apparently it gets better, but
Yeah, I was
Personally,
surprised you weren't really as into it as I was. I really enjoyed my campaign of the game. I put in like 80 hours since the first. I should have done a second one.
I only ever got interesting parts of the story like every 5 hours. Like it felt like it took forever for anything to happen.
I mean, we've talked about it before. The way the game is structured, you could theoretically skip most of the monastery parts. But I actually really liked the monastery parts. I liked being able to explore, talking to all the characters, having tea time, and just I got into the story and just learning about the characters and building that up. That was fun for me. But yeah, if I have to say, my favorite character is Edelgard, even though I couldn't remember her name for like 2 minutes. But that's just how my brain is. I'm not good with names in general.
I'm not usually good with names. For some reason, that one just popped in my head, and I was like, oh yeah. I didn't even choose that much. I don't know how I knew that.
Well, I mean, Edelgard is important. I just, couldn't remember. Let's see here. Cade Bean 64. Noted. I got it. Hello there, Joycey. Micah Sprout. I hope there's Mario Maker 3 in 2022.
Why?
Well, I mean, you're entitled to want that, but I wouldn't assume that we'll get it. Then just because Mario Maker 2 is already on Switch, and it's one of those things that I think it would be like a per platform kind of game, unless they had like some sort of really unique idea.
Just release DLC or something.
Yeah.
I don't know what they could do to justify having 2 different Mario Makers on the same console.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's see here. Moving on. I won't be able to get to every comment, guys. I'm sorry. But let's see. Talbot Anatomy. Do you think we can see Let's Go Ho-Oh Lugia and Pokemon Stadium 3 after Arceus? Let's Go Gen 2? Yeah. Pokemon Stadium 3? No. The problem with Stadium, as much as I'd like that, is just that the mainline Pokemon games have already become increasingly more Stadium-like. They're gonna move in that direction, I'm pretty sure. If they decide to have like a dedicated, like pure sort of like rental battling, it's in the game already. Like there's even rentals in the game, so I don't really see it. But I'll tell you, I'd love to see a Pokemon minigame collection kind of game. Like the mini games in Stadium 1 and 2 were awesome. I would love for them to basically make like a Pokemon Mario Party. Like I'm totally down for that. Like I mean, if instead of like if they want to put another Mario Party on Switch after this one, don't do Mario Party, do Pokemon.
Just do Pokemon.
Yeah.
Stadium was like the only Pokemon game I've really played that much.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really know what the hell I was doing. I'd never played an actual Pokemon game. But I loved that game. And I love all the different unique stages. And I love the announcer. He's great. I would love it. And I know the reason they don't do this is because it would not go over well. Is if they just took like 150, maybe 300 Pokemon, and then just used only them, made them look way better, like way higher fidelity models, and really cool effects, and have the announcer, and just focus on pure battles with like 300 Pokemon, and make it look really cool, and then just make that the game. But I think no matter what they did with that, there would be too many people complaining
like
that
if
they
they
didn't get their Pokemon in.
So the problem is that if they were going to do that, right? Like let's say they did that. Why wouldn't Game Freak just use that engine in their game for the battles? Like, what would stop them from doing that? You know, it's a little redundant. The problem is that it's a little redundant. Even though I really liked Stadium back in the day, it made sense back in the day because the mainline Pokemon games were on handhelds. Do you want a way to play your Pokemon battles with 3D visuals? You play the Stadium games or you play the Coliseum games. So that's no longer a thing because now it's all on one platform.
Yeah, my only thing is if there's less Pokemon and you don't have to worry about a story or like a whole world, then you can really focus on making the moves look a lot cooler and working on fixing up all the animations and fixing up all the different special effects and stuff. Whereas if you have to make a mainline game, then you'd have to do that with all the Pokemon and do the story and do the world and all that. So they can just focus more time on that. And over time, they can, if they get all the Pokemon, then they can use like that same. It can be like a two-in-one deal, two birds with one stone. Right. Then you have all these Pokemon with better animations and better effects.
Yeah.
Saved up, so it's less work. I don't know.
I guess the problem is that, like, if they were to fund that initial project of making a stadium game, while they could eventually recycle that into their own games, the fact that, like, making its own thing, like, how much would that sell, right? I mean,
that's what I'm saying. I think people would complain too much for it to sell. Well, I would buy it.
Right, because it would be straightforward for you, right? It would cut out all the adventuring RPG stuff, and it's just like, hey, here's a Pokemon, and it's all just battling.
Yeah.
Honestly, I would love that. That's not that I like the mainline Pokemon games, but I also like battling. Like, I was actually talking about it with my friend earlier. Like, it would be really nice if there was a way to just play an application where you just do battles and you practice battles. And they're just not official. Like, what if there was an official one, and maybe they made the visuals like super as amazing as they could be. One of the issues that, to your points, that you would argue that maybe they wouldn't be able to do every single Pokemon in there. But if it's gonna be what I'm saying, it needs to have every single Pokemon possible, so you can play with all of the different like options. Now, granted, maybe they don't bring them all out at once. Maybe they just do the Pokemon that are currently available in the competitive format, and then they slowly expand that. But eventually, everything would have to be in there. And what it would do, it would allow you to sort of test out your different team options and ideas, battle with beautiful visuals. They could still be rentals involved, and they could do the entire stadium structure, really. They could have like that sort of battle tower or stadium sort of event. They could have the mini games. Like, they could still do all that. I'm sort of talking it up in my head, like, oh, well, maybe it could do well. Like, maybe it's something they could do if they're gonna have an off year for Pokemon, and like maybe maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there could be a Stadium 3, maybe, but it's not. I think it could, like, if it's the way I described it, where it functions as an official way to test out Pokemon teams, and it also has like that stadium-like content, and it is like a very beautiful game because they just focus on the battling and the visuals of it. Like, I think there is something there, and I do think it is something that would sell, actually, if it's marketed like that. If it's marketed as a stadium, but also something for people to flesh out and test out all their different team ideas without having to go through the whole sort of, RPG experience. But the problem with that is that they have an official avenue to just go straight to the battles. If you can just battle without having to build up or train your Pokemon, then how many people are going to be willing to do that? And that can affect the mainline games too. So then they would have to rethink how they do that. So there's complications there, and then again, there's still the redundancy idea, because they still have the 3D battles already with the mainline games. And they are still progressively making it easier and easier to do these things in the mainline games in terms of testing out team ideas. So more likely there will not be a Stadium 3, but it is possible. It could conceivably work, but I don't expect it though. DE Fox, Game Freak could be doing the same thing they did with Sword and Shield, where they held back a lot of info until they broke Street Date and data mines revealed everything about the games. There could be something to that, where they just want to leave a lot of surprises like right towards the end. That is totally a consideration to be had, I think. I'm kind of hoping that this time around there are a lot of nice little surprises. Just because I haven't been told anything different doesn't mean there aren't different things. Like, and Sword and Shield is a great example of that. There's a lot of things they held back that people were kind of scratching. Like, people assumed that because they didn't say anything that there was nothing there. Like, I remember with Sword and Shield, when we saw the first trailer, people were like, oh, there's no open anything in this game. This is gonna be lame. It was. Well, it had elements of the wild areas. Like, there was open parts. And then people were like, oh, there's going to be barely any Pokemon in this game. They've only shown off like 10 new Pokemon. This game's only going to have like 30 new Pokemon. No, there was over 100 new Pokemon. Like, they just saved those surprises until right before the game was going to come out. So they may do something similar this time around as well. It's a good point. Brandon White, thanks Andre and friends for your awesome content. Brandon is awesome. He is my friends.
Yeah.
And thank you for the kind words. Let's see here. All right, I'm gonna get to a couple more ads and then we'll jump into the topics. If you like Three Houses, Nishan Kelker, if you like Three Houses, you love Persona, I think this might not be the first time I recommend it to you. It probably isn't. I think just based off timing and everything else I have to do and play, I'll probably try out Shin Megami Tensei 5 first, the new one, and maybe I'll go back to like Persona 5 after that. Game walkthroughs. Do you think Breath of the Wild 2 will have traditional dungeons? I think the dungeons in Breath of the Wild 2 are gonna have dungeons that are reminiscent of traditional dungeons, but they're gonna...
That's a good way to put it.
They're still gonna function differently because they're gonna have the Breath of the Wild mechanics in there, and they're gonna be within this open world. Yeah,
I think there'll be dungeons that are closer to the types of dungeons we're used to, but they're not gonna be exactly the same.
Right. Maybe a little bit of a hybrid sort of thing. You know, like the Divine Beast, like something beyond what the Divine Beasts were. Like maybe they're a little bit bigger. Maybe there's more unique designs to each dungeon there. There's better theming. The aesthetics are actually unique to each one. There's more of a story there. There's more of a unique boss there. Things like that I could sort of see them do, but they're still going to sort of fall under like an open world sort of construct, and with the Breath of the Wild mechanics.
Yeah.
Which means a whole bunch of like if you've done the shrines of Breath of the Wild, there's various ways to do them. So mapping out an entire complex, elaborate dungeon, that's going to take some work. Maybe that's why it's taking so long, because if they want to do some of those, bring back some of those sort of like elements from previous Zelda games, in order to do that but within the open style, like there's a lot more to sort of fix and work on with that.
It definitely is.
Yeah. Cadbane64, another Mario Maker for Switch. It can be a 3D one. Do you think this would be possible? A 3D Mario Maker?
3D.
Well, okay, well that's all
the
right.
tool sets needed for those are so much more complicated.
We basically kind of have it already, though. It's called Game Builder Garage. You can build 3D platformers with that, and it's a little bit more like sophisticated than a Mario Maker, I suppose. But
way more.
And you can't, but at the same time, you can't like make like a 3D. You can't like put like a straight up a Mario model, like a 3D Mario model. You can create a pixel version.
Yeah.
So there are some customization options that you don't have that make it a little bit harder to make it look like an actual Mario game, right? Like with Mario Maker, if someone who didn't know about Mario Maker saw you playing it, they would just think, oh, you're playing 2D Mario, right? With Game Builder Garage, if you can't fool someone to thinking that you're playing an official 3D Mario game. Unless, well, okay.
Unless they're really dumb.
Or if it's like a pixel version, because you can do the textures, right? You can't fool someone that it's an official like 3D sort of Nintendo game, but you could maybe fool someone to thinking that it's like a quasi 3D with all like 2D textures kind of game. Because like, you could basically recreate the Paper Mario from Nintendo Wii in Game Builder Garage.
Yeah?
Yeah. Like anything that uses like 2D textures, like you could do that. But if you want to like recreate like 3D models, that's where Game Builder Garage sort of is held back. You can't really customize 3D models too much. So there's that. But I mean, there is room to make a dedicated 3D Mario Maker. So I'd be down, but I don't know. That is also a little bit more elaborate.
It's just hard to sell something that complex to like as wide an audience It's like Game Builder Garage is very much marketed as like a tool to learn how to make games, whereas Mario Maker is just really easy to get into. Like anybody can learn it instantly, and it's a lot less complicated, so it's a lot easier to get into. It's harder to sell that as like a main, and you can make so many different games. Whereas with Mario, then you'd only be able to do Mario stuff. So I don't know. I don't think the sales potential for it is as good.
I would buy it, but there's a lot of things I would buy from Nintendo. So
Yeah.
If I would buy it, that doesn't mean the game's gonna sell 10+ million. I bought a Nintendo Wii U. Ronnie Fazio, I put about 90 hours in 3 houses. I did the Blue Lion route, and my favorite side character was Sylvain. Byleth getting in Smash made me play 3 houses. Oh, okay. See, Smash does sell.
There you go.
ASAP Bro, hello there. Let's see. Talbron, I just wish there was a couch co-op Pokemon game on Switch. Yeah, that would be nice, right? I mean, if you have 2 Switches, you could play Pokemon Unite with a friend, I think. And actually, there is Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. You can play that with a friend with one game and 2 different Joy-Cons. You can do that. So, you know, I don't know if it's the best way. I don't know. I guess conceivably, like, if I had, like, a partner, like, I would be down to play. Like, if a new Let's Go Pokemon game came out, I would be okay with trying co-op, but I probably would just play by myself. So, I guess now I'm just kind of thinking, like, what kind of Pokemon game could they make that would be tailor-made for, like, a co-op experience? Like, because Let's Go, I mean, they can, it's a thrown-in co-op mode, right? It's not like a full, it's not a game built around co-op. So what would be like
nearly difficult enough for co-op to be needed.
Yeah, and then couch co-op is local, right? So that's another consideration there. An online co-op, you know, like if they made like an MMO, I mean Pokemon game, or if they allowed you to, like, that doesn't have to be, MMO like qualities. Like maybe they could add that to the next Pokemon game. Like what if you could jump into the same world as your friend online and explore it together, right? Catching Pokemon in the wild area and doing team battles or something like that. That is that could be conceivably done with Gen 9. Like that could be like their big gimmick, you know?
In Sword and Shield, you can go visit your friends' wild areas, right?
You can, and you can kind of see them run around. The interaction is minimal, but it is there to an extent, right? So they could build on that, and it could become more of a true co-op experience like that. And actually, that would be really cool if they could kind of flush that out significantly.
That would be dope.
Yeah, maybe that's a hint towards something. Maybe they are sort of moving in that direction. Talbro, Mario Strikers sequel next year for the World Cup. The timing of that would work out pretty well, right? I'm gonna say, I mean, I want it to happen, but I feel like I think it'll be too soon for another Mario sports game because we're just getting Mario Golf this year.
Yeah. Unless
Next Level Games jump straight into Mario Strikers right after Luigi's Mansion 3. But even then, if you factor in COVID, I don't know if they can get that done in 2 years. I mean, it would be 3 years, but COVID is like a whole year subtraction almost for a lot of projects. Tough to say. I do think we should eventually get a Mario Strikers, and if we got Mario Golf and Mario Tennis, it does make you think that maybe Mario Strikers would be next, right? Like, I mean, they could do Mario Baseball, but come on, Strikers. Strikers makes more sense. Yeah,
the best Mario sports series.
Elatralot, I hope I got your name right. If Fi is being teased to return in Breath of the Wild 2, how would you feel if Girahim also returns? So, if you mean like in the sense that the same way how Fi is part of the Master Sword, if there was some sort of demon blade that had an element of Girahim or something like that in it, maybe, right? Like maybe Ganondorf decides he needs a more powerful weapon too, and there's some plot line with that. That could be pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is interesting how Girahim is kind of like the evil version of Fi, but you don't really see Ganon or Ganondorf using just like a weapon like as iconic as the Master Sword. Like,
Yeah.
you know, kind of like, oh, well, Link gets the Master Sword, and then have all the other people, now they have the Master Sword. It's weird how Girahim's like supposed to be that, but then it doesn't get passed down.
Right. I mean,
Like, what happens to him?
I don't want to spoil it for some people who play Skyward Sword, but I wonder if it gets destroyed. I don't really remember. But doesn't mean it couldn't be resurrected or reforged or something, right? I feel like the most iconic weapon from Ganondorf is the Twilight Princess one, with like that light blade that was stabbed through him, and then he decided to use it, the blade from the sages.
For Ganondorf, for sure. Just in Ganon in general, I guess it would just be the trident. We do see what looks like Ganondorf riding a horse with a trident in the first trailer on the wall. Good point. So maybe the trident will be...
Right, and we haven't seen Ganondorf really use a trident too much in the 3D games. Like, there's Ganon's puppet in Ocarina of Time who uses a trident, I believe. But it's mostly from the 2D games when he's Ganon and he uses a trident in that. Yeah, it's a good point, Brandon. Maybe he'll use a trident, and that'd be pretty cool. And then evolve into, like, not evolve, but mutate into a crazy demon monster when you piss him off.
Yeah. Tridents are pretty badass weapons, so.
Yeah. Be pretty cool. But let's go ahead and jump into some of this rumor discussion here. So there's quite a bit, right? Like, I'm really just going to these two Twitter pages. I have them linked in the description below, by the way, the channels here. We're going to talk about Marco Maro first, just because I don't trust these rumors nearly as much as Samus Hunter. Like, I think Samus Hunter rumors are actually better, just because I think they're more credible. So, in other words, I'm saving the best for last, or the more credible for last. But, I mean, there's different things here. Like, I mean, this one's actually not even from Marco Maro necessarily, but, like, I'm literally just going through his Twitter. But he retweeted that Metroid Prime Trilogy for Switch is ready to go. But that was coming from Jeff Grubb. Yeah, Prime Trilogy, I agree. I think he eventually gets to it, actually. So we'll come to that. So here's one. Detective Pikachu 2 will make a trailer debut early next year alongside the first one that will be ported to Switch. Generation 9 unlikely to happen in 2022 since there is a Pokemon Let's Go sequel planned for later next year. Pokemon Pinball will make a comeback in some way, somewhere. So, that's like a whole bunch of Pokemon information there, right? Detective Pikachu 2, that's like known. We know there's another Detective Pikachu game in development. So that's not really crazy to say, oh, maybe we get a trailer reveal next year, because guess what? At the beginning of every year, there is usually some sort of Pokemon Presents. They usually kind of stick to that schedule. So that doesn't surprise me at all, actually. And what's interesting, when you think about the timing for Legends Arceus, it is coming out January, right? That's right before February, that month where they usually have those big Pokemon updates. So the timing is very peculiar, right? That it comes out right beforehand. So they can have Pokemon Legends come out, and it gets like a month of, like, you know, that's what people are sort of talking about. And then once that month is up, like February 27th or whatever Pokemon Day is at the end of the month, they put out another Pokemon Presents, and then they announce a whole bunch of new stuff, right? Maybe they even announce DLC for Legends Arceus at that point. So they keep Legends Arceus relevant, but they also announce a few things, like they show off Detective Pikachu 2. Maybe they port the other one. I don't know if they'll do both, but they could. And in terms of Generation 9, I actually have thought about that myself. Like, Generation 9, I don't know if I expect it next year. And while that might be strange, because if you look at the pattern, we get a new generation every 3 years, there has been a pressure, because with Sword and Shield, there's been a pressure, not just with Sword and Shield, but even before that, because there's a higher expectation now for Pokemon, since they're now making 3D HD games with open elements. Like, there's a pressure for Pokemon games to be better, or be more ambitious, be more polished and refined. have a far greater visual fidelity. A lot of things that, you know, Pokemon was never really known for. Pokemon was never really known for like big, ambitious, like hardware pushing, like graphical fidelity. That was never really a thing. Like, were there games that were pretty? Yes, but they weren't like super challenging for a system. Now, Sun and Moon was fairly challenging for the 3DS, but most of the history it wasn't like that. And you know, they have to do that now, but there's this increasing amount more Pokemon that are in the game, so they need to still kind of build that, right? So it gets harder and harder for them to have every Pokemon ready, and there's a lot of backlash with that, and there's more backlash with the fidelity and the scope and just the gameplay style as well. Like, people want the Pokemon games to feel open. They want them to kind of look and play like Zelda. I'm not saying it's going to get exactly like that, but there is a lot of that demand and expectation. Not even necessarily Zelda, but when you sort of look at Pokemon compared to other games that are from developers that usually develop big 3D action adventure games, all of a sudden it doesn't really, you know, it kind of pales by comparison oftentimes. So point is, there is this demand and push for Game Freak to do better, to have wider scope and ambition, and I think they are moving in that direction. So with that in mind, it could be the case that they may want to sort of stretch out their cycle a little bit more. And what's interesting about that is that if you look at the Pokemon anime, now I haven't watched the anime recently, but last I checked, the Pokemon anime is different than it used to be. It's not really following the same sort of like process where Ash gets badges and then does the Pokemon League, and then that 3 years have passed by that point, and then they move on to the next region. Ash is in Kanto. He's in the first region. He's traveling the world doing different things. Last I checked, at least. So it's looking like there's not really like a pattern that Pokemon Company has to abide by with their anime and their video games, that they used to be closely tied. They might not be closely tied anymore. And if that's the case, you know, that does open up more freedom for when they can have these release dates, right? You look at Legends Arceus, that's already a change for the pattern, because that's what Game Freak is working on. Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, the remake, is being outsourced, which has also never been done before. So normally we would have the big Game Freak game come out in November. It's coming out in January instead. So, you know, maybe Generation 9 is like a little bit of a ways off. Maybe it doesn't come out next year. Maybe it comes out the year after. And if we get Let's Go Johto as a replacement, I'm fine with that. That would be great. I would be pretty excited for Let's Go Johto. Like that would be cool. But that doesn't mean Let's Go Johto's coming, right? Like, this is a rumor. I don't. Let's Go Johto could happen. I do feel like eventually Let's Go Johto does make sense. I don't know if it comes out holiday 2022, but it could. And it wouldn't be as hard for them to do as compared to a Generation 9 by that point.
Yeah, I definitely think it'd be good to give Gen 9 another year. Just let it have more time.
Right, especially if Legends Arceus is like, you know, kind of like a proof of concept of that, like a fully open Pokemon game. Yeah.
You got this big, huge, well, relatively, we'll see how big it is. You know, Pokemon game.
It'll be bigger than the wild areas in Sword and Shield.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like it's the closest they've come to having a sort of Breath of the Wild Pokemon that people always say they want. So let that be like the big Pokemon game. If you want another Pokemon game, get Detective Pikachu or Let's Go or something smaller towards the end of the year, and put Gen 9 in holiday 2023.
Yeah. I mean that would be fine. And if Generation 9 comes out in time for a new piece of Switch hardware, like, maybe.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. But let's continue on with the rumors here. So, Marco Maro says, as I stated a year ago, there is a remake for Oracle of Ages and Seasons in the works, 2022 to 2023. There were plans to include a third game that was planned originally for the Game Boy Color. What's clear, at least since the start, it's that it will be separate releases.
That's interesting. So you don't get Oracle of Ages and Seasons, you get Oracle of Ages, and then you go and you buy Oracle of Seasons. I mean, that'd be kind of strange for a remake to not just include both games, especially when there's such niche little Zelda games.
And they want to include the third game. So
yeah, it's not like everybody's super aware of Oracle and Ages and would know. I bet there'd be so many people confused, like, oh, do I buy Oracle? Do I buy Ages?
Well,
Does
I mean,
it matter?
Pokemon
I
does
understand.
that. So
yeah, but it's normal by now. People understand what they're going for.
yeah.
For Zelda to do it, I think it would lead to more confusion.
I don't want them to do that. I really don't. Because I want just all the content in one thing, right? I don't know, it's tough. Like, to do a remake for both games and then include a third version, like, how would that work? Would you have 3 different games?
God, I would hate that.
I don't know. I think I would almost prefer, like, maybe
I guess it'd
it's
be
one
fine
game
if it
and
was
there's just
like...
and there's you choose a path, and each path kind of takes you through the different one, and then it just encourages replayability that way. And they include that third path, which would be for the third game.
I don't know enough about the game to understand what exactly is different about them.
I don't remember, because I played them, but I didn't play them for, it was years ago.
Maybe it'd be okay
did
if they were like $30 a piece instead of like...
Maybe. Maybe they have like a bundle release or something. Yeah.
I find it very hard to believe that they would expect to sell 2 $60 remakes. You know,
I don't know. I feel like it just makes more sense to just give us the games as they are on the eShop. And
people complain enough about Skyward Sword HD being $60 without this game being $120.
Yeah, no, I don't see that happening.
Jesus.
I feel like maybe just, this is just my personal opinion, but I feel like just put the games on the eShop and make a new 2D Zelda. Just do that. Like, would I like to see Oracle of Ages and Seasons with, like, you know, new, like, remade graphics, kind of like Link's Awakening, but not that style specifically, but just like, you know, a nice 3D sort of, but still top-down 2D Zelda style. I mean, it would look beautiful, right? But also, they could do that for a new Zelda game. They could make a new 2D Zelda. They have to make a new 2D Zelda eventually, right? So, we just got Link's Awakening remake. Are they going to do another remake without making a new 2D Zelda? I think eventually they got to make a new 2D Zelda. Eventually. Maybe they do another remake before then, but I don't know. This is one of those things where I'm skeptical as well.
I would at least like them to do some kind of, I don't know, remaster of the games. Not necessarily for graphics, but if they're not going to do a whole remake, at least put in some like gameplay improvements and like nice quality of life updates and stuff.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, they could do like a little bit of a remaster, right? That's what you're saying. Maybe. I don't know. Like I said, I didn't really play them that much, so I don't even know what they would have to enhance.
I have no idea.
Yeah. It's one of the few Zelda games I haven't like played from beginning to end. Like,
I've never seen like anything of this game.
So I've done Zelda 1. I haven't beaten Zelda 2. So Zelda 1 I've done entirely. Zelda 2 I have not. Link to the Past I have. Minish Cap I have. Oracle Agency is the other one I haven't. All the 3D Zeldas I've done. Although I did Phantom Hourglass, but I did not do Spirit Tracks.
Spirit Tracks?
Yeah.
That's
everything else I've done. I did a Link Between Worlds. Link Between Worlds was awesome.
Oh yeah.
Love that.
My favorite 2D Zelda game.
Yeah, mine as well. And then Link's Awakening Remake was stellar. I enjoyed that too.
It was good. You can still definitely tell it was a Game Boy game.
Yeah.
But,
but it was nice. It was a nice experience. But moving on here, we got more. There's more rumors. So I'm gonna go through all the rumors, and then we'll get back to the chat and kind of see what you guys think. But and then we'll go to the Samus Hunter stuff after that. Let's see here. As I said before, even if N said no more Zelda for the anniversary, Wind Waker and Twilight Princess are done for a while, so they will come sooner. So they will come sooner than later. Don't know anything about Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask HD, but something about the N64 version that maybe we'll know later this year. So again, like, there's always a chance that they could just put a couple Zeldas on the eShop. Like, if they do add, for example, N64 Online this September, then there we just get Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. Like, that's it. There you go. Yeah. And because the Nintendo Online, like, they do kind of enhance the games a little bit. Like, they are in HD. They added online play. So, like, maybe Nintendo is thinking of a way to sort of, like, remaster, add a little bit of a spin to whatever sort of game catalog they offer. So if they do N64, maybe they add something to that. Maybe it's just HD. Maybe it's kind of like what they did with Mario 64 and 3D All-Stars, where they clean up some of the HUD elements and stuff, and they present it in with actual HD, and it would look better. Yeah. So, you know, maybe something like that, and it would be clean. So, you know, maybe that Nintendo has something like that planned. But going to Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD, I also think that they're real. But again, it's like Metroid Prime Trilogy HD. Like, Nintendo's just kind of saving it, and when it comes, it comes. It really comes down to when Nintendo feels that there is a right time to sort of release it. And that's hard to say, because you could have argued the right time was a while ago. You could argue that I don't know, like maybe it comes out next February for the 36th anniversary. Like, you know, like they could do that. Like, and it wouldn't necessarily be for the anniversary, but it may be more as a way to kind of tide fans over until Breath of the Wild 2. Because one argument you can make is that if Breath of the Wild 2 is a holiday 2022 release, right, that comes out, let's say October or November, right, the end of the year, basically, we just got Skyward Sword July, so it's almost like a year and a half, right, if you round down a lot. But, you know, close. That's more than a year, and they like to have a Zelda game every year. So maybe they want to, like, put something else in the middle of that to sort of tide fans over. Maybe it could be Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD, right? Or maybe they're just like, yeah, a year and a half is not a big deal. Don't worry about it. So we'll see. It also could maybe be Ocarina of Time Majora's Mask on the Nintendo eShop. Like, it doesn't have to be Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. So I do agree that they're real, and it's just really a matter of when they put them out. If we see them come out by the end of the fiscal year, I'll say that this rumor was true. If there's also some sort of Ocarina of Time Majora's Mask added to the Nintendo eShop with like HD visuals, which wouldn't mean that much, right? By the way, it would just look slightly better. But we did mention Metroid earlier, so there's some Metroid stuff. So this is what Marco Mara says about Metroid. Metroid Prime Collection should be ready for the first half of 2022, even if it's not finished since ages. I heard they included more stuff since then, so it's not 100% Metroid Prime Trilogy Wii HD. First look at Metroid Prime 4 later on. The game is 65% of its development cycle, so the English here is broken. So, not saying that's necessarily a red flag, but what it suggests is that if the person doesn't speak clear English, that means that, you know, they speak that's not their main language, right? And if that's the case, why are they doing tweets and they're not saying it's not their main language? What's their motivation for doing that? Well, the motivation might be because they feel like they can get a better audience for that language, which means if they're just trying to do it to get like views and clicks, then it's kind of suggestive, like, are they even doing this to give us correct information, right? But I don't know if Brandon, if you kind of agree with that point there, but that's just something I consider. I'm not saying that's what it is, but just something I consider.
I don't know. I guess that's a possibility, but I don't know. English is just a really popular language. So yeah, they might have just thought it would be a good idea to put it. Yeah, well,
like, I mean, for example, there's Kelios who has leaked things before, and Kelios, I believe, speaks French, but they also speak English. Like, they do both. Like, it's not like if you follow Kelios, they do a lot of. It's not like exclusively one thing or the other, right? So it's a mix, and that's fine, right? Like, but this person only is like predominantly one thing, and we don't know what that thing is. So it's just like we kind of see but maybe they're just not good at writing things. But anyway, just to the rumor itself, though, I actually am of the frame of mind that Prime Trilogy has a good chance to come out next year, and if not next year, early 2023. So, yeah, I mean, if they're saying it comes out first half of 2022, that would suggest that Prime 4 is going to get a big focus in 2023, I would say. And it may even be like sort of showing off at next year's E3. So that all kind of like is conceivable. The idea of it being more than just Prime Trilogy HD with extra content in there.
Why?
Only if Prime 4 is like years away. But I don't know. I think just give us Prime Trilogy, but basically maybe give it the Skyward Sword HD treatment. Like you make sure we have button controls, you make sure we have motion controls, so we have both. Clean up all the HUD elements. If there's any adjustments that need to be made, you make them. But Prime Trilogy HD is already like a remaster, so Prime Trilogy HD is going to be a remaster of a remaster. So it doesn't need that much extra work. Putting it in HD would be nice. Now, would they perhaps improve the visuals more than they did for Skyward Sword? It might need it a little bit more because of the art style, right? Like maybe if they give it more of a Twilight Princess HD sort of like makeover, that'd be nice. But granted, it's also 3 games. So are we really going to expect them to do that kind of effort for 3 games?
But it is 3 relatively small games compared to how long a Zelda game is.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Metro Prime games aren't short, but they are shorter than Zelda. So, I personally just wouldn't advise expecting extra content in Prime Trilogy. It's already 3 games.
Yeah, it's already plenty of content.
Yeah.
They're already working on the next mainline game, so why are they...
Yeah.
Why would they have new content?
Do I want there to be new content? Yes. Do I want them to add like a Kraid battle that was cut from the original Metroid Prime? Yes. Would I love it if they were to like work over the multiplayer in Prime 2 and make it online? Yes. Would I love it if they were to just give us an extra like side mission in Prime 3? Of course. But they're not going to do it. That's just, there's no reason to.
No.
Yeah. The games are great as they were. So
I don't think they need that to do that to sell copies, so why would they?
Yeah. But anyway, for this rumor, I'll say that there's nothing, I mean, saying that Prime 4 is 65% done, okay. Sure. I guess that would suggest that it's coming out holiday 2023, which is kind of what we already expect, so, you know. Like, nothing here, if it is...
It doesn't sound crazy.
It doesn't sound crazy, but it's also one of those things where, like, there's nothing here that, like, if all of this comes true, I'm not going to be like, hey, that rumor was right. This is all kind of like, yeah, it kind of makes sense.
This is a weird thing to say, that the game is 65% done. It just sounds like a weird thing for a developer to tell you.
Right.
Like somebody to leak. It just doesn't sound right to me.
Yeah, I don't know if I buy it. And also, the other thing is that this person kind of tweeted all these things out on July 16th, which at this point was, like, more than a week ago. But, normally, if someone has real information, they don't have all of the real information. So, if someone's saying that they have all these inside sources, they would basically... They would need to have a lot of different sources coming from a lot of different places. And it just seems unlikely that you never, whenever we get real leaks, that you never get all of, it's never the case that every single one comes all in one place. They usually come from separate places and reports. So, I don't know. To me, it almost feels like this is all just, you know, maybe speculation masked as leaks, right? Or maybe borrowing information
Yeah.
from other people who have leaked that are fairly trusted, right? Because, for example, they're talking about Prime Trilogy happening. Duh. Prime Trilogy HD is happening.
God, Prime Trilogy's been happening since, what,
Yeah.
2018?
Right. Now, some people don't believe it
Jesus
because it's
Christ.
taken so long, but it's not that the game isn't real. It's not that the game isn't coming. It's just, when is it coming? So,
At this point, I'm just so tired of Metroid Prime's coming soon, or Metroid Prime trilogies in development. Like, shut up. I've been saying this since 2018.
Right. Yeah.
Just let me see the announcement. I'll believe it when I see them announce it themselves.
Yeah. Like,
this is literally the 16th time you've said this. It's ridiculous.
I mean, over the years, I've definitely made multiple Metroid Prime Trilogy videos. Like, oh, there's more proof, right? Or hope. But it's kind of one of those things where, like, you kind of reassess. But, like, I saw this article. I didn't feel at all compelled to make a video on it because... Duh. You know? Now, I'm not saying I won't make a Prime Trilogy HD video at some point this year. I may. But it's just kind of like... That one report alone is just like, yeah, we've known. Thanks for telling. It's kind of like, hey, Brandon, did you know I wore a blue shirt on January 31st?
Wow.
Yeah, and then on next week I tell you the same thing, and you're like, wow, thanks.
It's like when the developer of Bayonetta 3 comes out and says the development's going well. It's like, thank you for saying absolutely nothing.
Right. Yeah, all it is saying... And I mean, if anything, it's saying, hey, as far as we... At this point, the game still isn't canceled, right? So maybe you could say for the Prime Trilogy reports, like, oh, it's still real. Okay. But moving on. Kirby's next big adventure is Sunday to be expected in 2022. Game was designed as a 3D adventure with RPG elements. I actually think that'd be really cool. I'd be really into that. Is that what's happening? Maybe.
Who knows?
I joked around the other day that the next Kirby game would be a 4D game, which would basically mean a 3D game with time travel. So that'd be sick, especially when you consider that Kirby rides on a warp star and there's space. So what if the game's like core mechanic is warping the space-time continuum? All right, we'll say Nintendo. You can
Kirby does
say
need
that for Mario.
an overhaul to literally everything about it, because I feel like it's getting so samey. Like it needs its time to come. Maybe 3D would do it well. Maybe 3D would do it justice. Because like, you want to complain about Zelda being the same thing until Breath of the Wild? Kirby has been the same forever, and it's way more the same.
Yeah, I
But
want
3D
them
would
to change something
sounds
up.
epic.
Like, it doesn't have to be 3D, just for the record. It's just, for me, I want it to be fresh. And 3D with RPG elements would be fresh. My idea would be real fresh, though. 4D Kirby, come on. Come on. Think about it. Someone. It'll be great. But anyway, I do think a Kirby game is coming. Hal told us a Kirby game was coming. This is not a rumor.
Yeah.
This is a fact. It's not a rumor. Now, the rumor here is that it's expected in 2022 and it's being designed as a 3D adventure with RPG elements. That's the rumor. Possible, but that's not the only way.
Other people say that it was going to be 3D before.
Yeah.
Early in the year.
What we know is that Hal wants to make a very ambitious Kirby game. They want to make it bigger and better than before, right? What does that translate to? That doesn't have to be another 3D Kirby game. Okay, it could be Star Allies with 60 frames per second, or I don't know. Like, it could be Star Allies, just a little bit better.
60 frames per second.
I don't know. It might be. It probably isn't. I'll believe it when I see it. But either way, though, I do expect us to see Kirby in the near future. I wouldn't be shocked if I've mentioned a Kirby eShop game before. I still think that's probably happening. Maybe it comes out and it could be a shadow drop this year, right? But we're talking about like a small eShop title.
Kirby and next year will be 4 years.
Right, and
so
I think
comes out next year. There'd definitely be enough time for them to have made like a 3D one. So they usually come out with Kirby a lot. They just come out with Kirby like every 2 years.
And let's just mention it because we have to mention every single time COVID, right? Like it could have been conceivably have been ready for this year. But so I think that there probably is a mainline Kirby not too far off because we usually get multiple per generation. So yeah, we're gonna probably get another one. Will it have this? That's it would be different. I would be down. So we'll see. But let's move on to another. For me, it's a duh, but maybe not. So Marco Mara's saying, "Oh, there's a Donkey Kong game coming." Duh. So some people might doubt that just because they don't trust rumors, but it's coming. But anyway, so this is what Marco Mara says. DK2D New Adventure is one of the big hits for next year. Still unclear when, since there was a plan for this holiday season time ago, but will make sense to use it as a closing or opening FY fiscal year. Splatoon 3 should come early next summer. So I actually think Splatoon 3 might still come out March 2022, actually. I think Splatoon 3 is way more likely to come out before the Donkey Kong game because Nintendo hasn't even announced the Donkey Kong game. That doesn't mean that it can't come out before Splatoon 3, but I just simply based off what we've seen so far, Splatoon 3 just feel like Nintendo's sort of like kind of building up to that. And Splatoon 3 could be a summer game. That has been a time we've seen Splatoon come out before, so it could be
Wouldn't be impossible, just because like Splatoon 3 I think is probably a much bigger deal. Still, I think it's going to sell a lot more units. And it's
based
gonna push
off the history of
and
recent
make them a lot
Donkey
of
Kong
money.
sales, yeah, Splatoon's is a better bet.
It's also a 3D game, which we're saying that the Donkey Kong game's a 2D game. So it's definitely possible that they could announce a Donkey Kong and it would still come out before Splatoon.
Right, it could.
But it does seem kind of weird to bet that a game that hasn't been announced will come out before a game that has, but it has happened before. So.
Right, all of that can come down to scope too. To your point. But I personally currently am thinking Splatoon 3 is the March 2022 release. Now I'm not like committed to that idea.
Surprised.
It's just they showed it off February, and when they showed it off last February, that was looked pretty far along. So to think the game comes out 13 months afterwards, when they showed off a hub area, multiplayer, single player, HUD elements at the beginning of the game, like if they showed all that off, I think that they probably could get the game out, perhaps 13 months later.
I agree.
So and another point to consider is that Nintendo typically wants some sort of big game to close the fiscal year. If you don't know, the fiscal year ends March 2022. We got Monster Hunter Rise, which I think is probably going to be a 10+ million seller once everything's said and done. Animal Crossing was the year before, and that's like 35 plus or something close to that.
Something insane.
Yeah, I mean, Breath of the Wild was 2017. Like, there's a history of big. It's not necessarily every year is a big release, but it's becoming a pattern almost. So to put out Splatoon 3, which would be a sequel to a game that sold at least 12 million, yeah, it would fit. In terms of the Donkey Kong game, I'm not actually 100% in belief that it's just a 2-dimensional Donkey Kong game. Now, I'm not saying it's a 3D Donkey Kong game either, right? We talked about this before, Brandon, and we talked about it in conjunction with Metroid. We talked about before they showed off Metroid Dread that it would be a 2D Metroid game, but the line between 2D and 3D would be blurred. Look at Metroid Dread. There are several cutscenes that we've seen just in the beginning of the game that show first-person elements. We've seen a lot of cutscenes that are all in real time. It even seems like there might still be some interaction you can have in those cutscenes, and it all pivots fluidly and dynamically. There's even some gameplay moments where it goes behind Samus's shoulder, 3D, all the time, and the entire environment is rendered in 3D. So, in other words, even though Metroid Dread, the majority of its gameplay is, 2-dimensional style Metroid gameplay, there is a lot of 3D elements in there. There is a lot of perspective change in there. It really is kind of fitting of the 2.5D moniker. It's blurring that line between 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional gameplay. Now, with Donkey Kong, it's actually kind of similar, and it's perhaps even more reason to be similar because there isn't a history I mean, there's other M, but with all of the other Metroid games, the 2D Metroid games, they're just 2D. But with Donkey Kong, though, Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, there was a lot of boss fights that would go behind the shoulder. There was a lot of dynamic camera angles that would zoom in or go at an angle. And the environments were rendered in 3D, but it was two-dimensional gameplay for the most part. Very similar to Metroid Dread, actually. I didn't even bring up that there are parts that zoom in with Metroid Dread with a lot of the melee attacks as well. It's all very similar. The idea being that they kind of blurred those lines a little bit. And that was with Jungle Beat. And Tropical Freeze and Returns, all rendered in 3D, mostly side-scrolling gameplay. But with Tropical Freeze, they really did focus on jumping back and forth in the backgrounds. So there was a foreground and a background. And there were moments where you would see the camera pivot, like with the barrel blast, and it would be dynamic, and you would see like these beautifully realized 3D environments, but the gameplay was in 2D. So there is a history of Donkey Kong having like this blurred sort of 2D, 3D sort of style. And if you go back to the initial Country games on Super Nintendo, it was one of the first games to actually use like actual 3D animation, granted, but it was still in side-scrolling gameplay. So point is, there's a big history here of Donkey Kong games sort of playing around with that perspective, even though they still are mostly two-dimensional. There's something about them that goes a little bit beyond typical two-dimensional gameplay. And considering that the 3D Mario team, well, it might not be a 3D Mario team, but the Nintendo EPD, which works on Mario, some of it does. Considering that they're doing this, and they're not leaving it to retro, and the idea is that they want to like sort of bring Donkey Kong to a level of promise it had way back when Donkey Kong made Nintendo who they were in the West. They're probably going to want to do something that is somewhat ambitious, somewhat larger in scope. I think something like Metroid Dread would probably work, but it could even be something even a little bit beyond that. So I don't know. I'm not saying it's a 3D game. I'm just simply saying, don't expect basic two-dimensional Donkey Kong with no sort of variation there. I think that's just off.
Yeah, I think at the very least it'd be great to have those fully 3D, super dynamic cutscenes, because I love that about Metroid Dread. And I love that they're in real time, so there's absolutely no cut in between gameplay and the cutscenes. It's just right smooth into it. So I mean, there's sometimes where it's hard to even tell, man, am I playing the game? Is this a cutscene? And it gets really just super dynamic in that way. So I would love that for Donkey Kong. And just pretty much all Nintendo like 2D things going forward. That's super epic.
Yeah. Super epic.
But it would be interesting if they had like a true 2.5D like fixed camera angle, but you can move smoothly back and forth. Kind of like if you ever played something like Castle Crashers or something, where you can move just smoothly in the forward and background, but the camera's still stuck in like a 2D angle that changes sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, there's I think I'm trying to remember. I think with with one of the older Country games, they actually did something too, where like in the map traversal, it looked a little different. Yeah, that's an option, right? Or like they could even, one idea that we've thrown around before is like the isometric gameplay of 3D World, like they could do that too. But you know, a fixed camera but it's not like fixed like, you know, right here, but maybe it's like there, right, or something like that, at an angle, to sort of see movement, and maybe that movement you can kind of move forward and back and left and right a little bit, so it's not just left to right or right to left. So you know, there could be something like that. I absolutely think that there's something to that. But yeah, so the whole Donkey Kong thing with this, it's just, like I said, I don't necessarily believe this person. They're basically just talking about things we've all talked about before. It's basically just creating rumors that already existed. So when they come true, people may be like, oh, see, Marco Maro knew it all. No, we've talked about Donkey Kong since the beginning of the year. And even before that, we've talked about it, but at that point it was speculation just because it made sense. But then we actually got information suggesting that it was real. Yeah, Kirby. There were interviews from HAL at the beginning of the year say they were working on an ambitious Kirby game. Not crazy. Prime Trilogy. It's been rumored since 2018 from credible sources, right? And even if there are no rumors, it makes sense to remaster Prime Trilogy in preparation for Prime 4. It's just logical. Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD. That's the one that has also been rumored and reported from different news sites. So again, nothing crazy there. Oracle of Ages and Seasons. All right, I mean, I've heard some rumors for that one. If that one turns out to be true, then, you know, maybe they get something. But it's also kind of like a widely expected sort of old set of Zelda games a lot of people have been sort of begging for. So, you know, there's a lot of all the games that are being requested to be remade. I think Oracle of Ages and Seasons are the ones that are kind of at the top. Detective Pikachu 2
shares a lot of the reasons why they remade Link's Awakening.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard to get. It's like only on very specific platforms.
Yeah.
It's very expensive to get nowadays. And just is kind of an obscure game too. Yeah.
Yeah. But just going back, Detective Pikachu 2, that's not a rumor. We know it's coming. It's factual. We factually know that the next Detective Pikachu has been in development. That is a fact. Like the company, Pokemon Company, has told us that. So there's no interpretation there. Like could it be canceled? Yeah, but they told us years ago that it was in the works. But going on, there's a little bit more. Next LG next game going smoothly. Probably as LG, that's a developer. No, Next Level Games. Okay, that I feel like saying Next LG is a weird way to do that, but whatever. They could have just been NLG. But anyway, Next Level Games game is going smoothly. Probably ready to be shown at some point next year. There's also an early prototype for Wii's Punch-Out on the Switch, maybe for a future port, remake, or sequel. So that's another one that's like, okay, the first part. Next Level Games being almost ready to show off a game is not a rumor. That's just logical deduction, because Luigi's Mansion 3 came out 2019. So to expect them to be ready to show off a game 3 years later, yep, that's just a normal...
Sounds about right.
Right, like it's not at all crazy. So it could happen, but that's just logical deduction. That's not, hey, someone told me the Next Level Games might show off their game next year. Duh. Anyway, it's not necessarily a duh, but it's just kind of like it makes sense. So, you know, what is that going to be though? That's what I'm more interested in. Like, what game are we getting from Next Level Games? Because they did a great job with Luigi's Mansion 3. So, whatever they're working on, I bet it's gonna be a really good game. Maybe it's F-Zero. Anyway, that's just me hoping. The other part, he said there's also an early prototype for Wii's Punch-Out on the Switch, maybe for a future port, remake, or sequel. There's just way too much room for a future port, remake, or sequel. Those are all three different things.
It could be anything, any available options. It's like, okay, thanks.
So an early prototype for Wii's Punch-Out would be what? Wii's Punch-Out? So, I don't know. I guess is the idea suggesting that they're just kind of playing...
What does that even mean? An early prototype of Wii's Punch-Out?
Wii's Punch-Out is a finished game.
Yeah, but why use an early prototype? Why is it an early prototype of Wii's Punch-Out finished?
You know what I think? I think if they just gave it the the Skyward Sword HD treatment, Wii's Punch-Out would look pretty good because of the art style. They would hold up pretty well. Maybe don't sell it for $60, but
yeah,
they could put out maybe like a $30-$40 HD remaster for Punch-Out. And just
let's be honest, it'd be $50.
Maybe.
It'd be $50.
Maybe. But you know what I mean. Like it probably, I don't see it being a full. If it's just like, if they just give it like the HD remaster treatment, for Punch Out, I don't think it'd be $60.
No.
Now, if it's a remake,
I'd buy that.
if it's a remake or a sequel, absolutely, right? Like, for example, Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp, those are being remade, and it's 2 different games. So that's different. That $60, that makes sense. But if they were to take those games and just remaster them, and they're still, it just became basically Game Boy Advance games, but in scale to 8 to 1080p, no. So, there's a difference. And yes, the franchise matters. Because Skyward Sword, Legend of Zelda, right? Punch Out. I'm not saying Punch Out's not cool. It's just in terms of scope and sales expectation, it's very different.
Selling power.
Right. And that's really it's all business decisions, right? Like the reason Nintendo sells games at $60 and doesn't drop the price is because they continue to sell. If they didn't sell, they would lower the price. There is another element of lowering the price decreases the value of them. But for something smaller, they do have cheaper prices. There's another thing here. I think this is the last. Yeah, this is the last rumor from Mark Amaro. Or last tweet, because there's a couple things in here. Rhythm Paradise gets a green light for a new entry for Switch months ago, but I shouldn't expect it until 2023. Pikmin 4 is a game with many years of work behind, and one unofficial restart around 2016-2017, similar to Metroid Prime 4. Finally, the game is very close to be finished. So with Rhythm Heaven Paradise, I don't have enough information on that to really give you guys good insight, unfortunately. It's one of those things that, yeah, it could happen, and it's not the kind of game that would have a long development cycle. So, even if there hasn't been a green light, Nintendo could green light it now, and it might come out by 2023, so...
Is that a new Rhythm Heaven game? Or, wait, can you say it again?
Rhythm Paradise / Heaven. So something from that franchise.
Okay.
Yeah. So, it's conceivable, but it's just, I got nothing on that. And the other one is also, to me, something that sort of strikes me as logical deduction. The fact that we haven't seen Pikmin 4 yet, even though Miyamoto told us back in 2015 that was near completion, I think it is one of those things where they decided to can the project or recycle the project later on and sort of redo a lot of it.
Yeah.
Or else we would have seen it already. And I do think that a Pikmin 4 is not far off, because if you look at what Nintendo's doing, they're building up to something. We got Pikmin 3 Deluxe last year, which alone isn't enough, but alone it does give you hope, right? But there's more. The more is in Nintendo Universal Park. Besides Mario, the only other franchise Nintendo has littered throughout the park are Pikmin, hidden all throughout. So maybe there's something there. But then going beyond that, we also know that there's a Pikmin mobile game that's supposedly scheduled for this year. So all of that is building up to something. Pikmin 3 Deluxe, Pikmin having a presence at Nintendo Universal Park, a Pikmin mobile game. I think all of that is in preparation for a Pikmin 4 that conceivably could be announced next year. So that's not crazy.
I wonder if Pikmin 4 was canned because it had a lot of concepts that revolved around the gamepad. I wonder if they initially wanted to really make a Pikmin game that really uses the gamepad a lot. And then they came up and they were like getting pretty close to the end of development and just realized, we're not going to finish this game because the Wii U was a failure. We are just going to move on to the Switch. We're just going to cancel this game and go into development for a Switch game.
That's an interesting point. What if that's what it was? It wasn't even that they thought it was bad. It just wasn't something that would work on Switch, so they just moved on. Maybe they recycled some elements from that, but they just moved on. Could be, right? And maybe Miyamoto was exaggerating when he said near completion, right? Like maybe it was going well, right? And they halted it. And I mean, there's a lot of projects that were worked on, and they just stopped. I'll tell you, I actually heard something the other day. Apparently, now don't. This is one of those things that we may never really even find out if it's true. So you can believe me if you want. You can believe me if you don't want. I don't even know if it's true. I'm just saying what I heard. But I heard that Star Fox Grand Prix was not a hoax. So if you guys remember Star Fox Grand Prix, it was even like, I think both Eurogamer and IGN like corroborated the report that there was a Star Fox Grand Prix coming. They even put out like a logo and stuff, and it was being developed by Retro Studios, and that it was looking pretty, and that there was gonna be like an open hub world and stuff like that. And it was gonna be like a racing game, but with Star Fox characters. But then no information came for a while, and then people started saying, "Oh, it was a hoax." And it wasn't. When I say people, I mean like people who supposedly had information said, "Oh, it was a hoax." So that's kind of where the story sort of died. But I heard recently that it wasn't a hoax, and it wasn't necessarily just DLC, the DLC from Starlink that had racing elements.
Yeah.
What I heard though is that Star Fox Grand Prix was in the works by Retro Studios, but the DLC for Starlink and Starlink itself didn't impress them enough to continue pushing forward with the project. So it was canned. Which is maybe not the best exciting news, but it kind of, if that's the case, it kind of goes to show you that that's sort of how these things can be. Like, there are projects that Nintendo will have in the works, and then that's not happening, move on to something else. Like, that happens. We have some proof of that. For example, we know that Retro Studios was working on a Zelda spin-off during the Wii era. Canned. There's a concept art out there. You can Google it. It's out there. This happens. So, I mean, if you look at... it seems like with Retro Studios, a lot of their projects get canned. Because before they put out Metro Prime 4, they had like 5 games in development. Some of them are really cool. Yeah, just Google it. There's some very exciting cool stuff there. And it was all canned. So,
I think it was it Retro Studios that was working on that Chic game?
Yes. That's what I was talking about.
I was looking at more concept art that came out for it. That concept art is insane.
Super cool.
It's awesome.
Let me see if I can Google it real quick so I can show people in the stream. Retro Studios Zelda game. Google knows, it's always
There's
listening.
some good high quality pictures and leaks of the artwork.
I'm not sure what here is real or concept art. I mean, some of this I know is real, so I'll show you guys. Yeah, like this image is real. I don't remember seeing this one, but if that would have been cool if true. Like, you see, this is like a dark. I think this one was real. Like, you see, there's this dark figure hovering here. This one, this one's real too. Like, they were gonna have like a, sort of a dark-looking Sheik-like character, sort of traversing. This guy looks male, but it's not Sheik. A Sheik-like character is the point. So some sort of Sheikah ninja. Yeah, I'm not saying all this concept art is real, but some of it is. Like, this one I know is real, and that one, I think this one as well. There might be a few others, but yeah, it was a cool looking thing. But yeah, was not greenlit all the way to becoming an actual game. So yeah,
it just looks so cool. All the concept they had for it is insane.
Yeah, it is. So let me check in the chat here. Yeah, I think D-Fox, I think I got. I'm just running through a chat here. I'm assuming you already saw what I said about Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD. Like they're happening. It's just kind of when. Oh, Brandon, we never talked about it. Yeah, iSonic is asking. This is for Brandon. How are you feeling about Steam Deck?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What do you think?
I kind of assumed we were just getting there eventually.
I completely forgot. Actually, I intended on us talking about it first.
There's a lot of different angles you can take with this.
All right,
but
so
just my general.
Let's finish up. Let's go through the chat a little bit, and then we'll get your Steam Deck thoughts, and then we'll talk about the Samus Signer rumors. Sound good?
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
That way it can be like its own like topic. Josh Lycap, do you think we'll see another Animal Crossing New Horizons update soon, if ever? Yeah, I do think there will be another update because they're going to continue to update that game for a while. I don't know when though, so that's all I can really tell you. Tay Rule, Donkey Kong Country 3 had light RPG elements with slightly non-linear map. Yeah, I think that's the one I was sort of thinking about. Yeah, just kind of go to the point that, you know, they have done things in the past that aren't straight up just side-scrolling Donkey Kong and nothing else. Like they mix it up. Yep, Grand Prix. That was a thing a few years ago. Let's see here. Tigger. Luigi's Mansion 3, I'm assuming LM3 stands for Luigi's Mansion 3, right? Is also hinting to Mario Strikers being the next game in the coming soon movie section of the game. I need to check that out. There could be something there. I'll have to look into that, but maybe. I would love to see Next Level Games make Mario Strikers. So,
yeah.
Super Chris. Also, I personally think Nintendo's got the right idea of bringing back obscure games. I agree. I think, you know, with them bringing back Donkey Kong, Metroid Dread, not that those are obscure necessarily, but they're franchises that are perhaps underutilized would be the right way to word it. They're bringing them back, and Metroid Dread is looking like it's going to be a real good seller, and I think the same's going to apply to Donkey Kong when that comes around. But then also we're getting Advance Wars 1 2 Reboot Camp, we're getting WarioWare. Like, I'm excited to play these games. Like, I'm excited to see these franchises that were born on Game Boy Advance. Like, they're coming out this year. It's gonna be great, and I hope that Nintendo kind of continues to do that. I hope this is sort of a sign of more to come. And the reason we didn't get as much of them early on with Switch is because I think Nintendo first wanted to focus on getting the big sort of evergreen titles out there, like your Zelda, your Mario, your Smash, your Mario Kart, your Splatoons, your Animal Crossings.
Things everybody will be into.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
And they're still going to do that, right? We're getting Splatoon. They're going to continue like giving us some of that, right? Like with Splatoon 3 and Breath of the Wild 2. But I think they're also going to take this as an opportunity to start putting out some other stuff, seeing if they can build up an audience for that, so they can also become things Nintendo can rely on in the future. So it's very exciting to see that, and I'm looking forward to what else could come, obviously. But also the games we're just straight up getting this year. I think I'm actually, even though you could say that this lineup isn't like as ambitious as previous years, like we don't have like Breath of the Wild 2, Mario Odyssey 2, and Smash Ultimate Deluxe like all lined up month by month, but we have quality Nintendo games coming out every month all the way throughout the year. Even if they're not all like giant open world games, they're all like fun Nintendo games, and that's great. So, you know, I'm content with how things are going. But yeah, Brandon, I think we can pivot to Steam Deck now. You haven't got a chance to really talk about it, so you know what do you make of the Steam Deck thing? Yeah, I'll shut up and just let you have at it.
There's several different ways that I can tackle this, like how this affects Nintendo. Is this a competitor to Switch? What I think about the device itself. I guess I'll just start by giving my general thoughts on the device. I think it's a good idea. I think it's a good little niche not even niche. I think there's a pretty good amount of people who'd be interested in this. People who want to play third-party games, like any game on Steam, pretty much on the go. There is like a lack of that because while Nintendo has some third-party games, they got Doom Eternal and a couple other games, Skyrim and things like that. There's still a ton of games that don't have. There's no Call of Duties. There's no, tons and tons of games that are not on Switch. And there's this kind of constant struggle of people wanting like every game to come to Switch, but it's like, well, that's not gonna happen. And even when they do come to Switch, they're not really. They're always the worst version. Even though they're decent versions and they work, they're still the worst version available usually. Unless it's a really old game like Skyrim, then it's pretty decent. But whereas the Steam Deck can have a much better. You can have the full fat, real PC version of Doom Eternal on a portable device. You don't have to deal with really low resolutions or settings way below even the lowest that PC offers.
Well, I mean, it's not going to
like
run
that.
them at max settings either, right?
No.
But it's definitely going to be a sizable increase over what Switch is.
Yeah. So I think it kind of it fills a good gap where it's not really competing with Nintendo's doing, because most of what Nintendo's sales are their exclusive games, the Nintendo games. They don't really sell because of third-party games, whereas this has all the third-party games and it's going to be the best way to play third-party games on the go. So it's got its own area where it can sit. But no, I like the device. I think it's a way better version of what it's trying to do than anything that's come before. And I don't know. I'm not super big on playing things on the go, so I probably won't get it, but I think it's cool. As far as what it means just like on a technological level, though, I find way more interesting because it kind of hints like where a next-gen Switch can go, like what is possible. Because before it was just all kind of speculation. It was like, what would a next-gen version of the Switch be capable? What is the hardware that exists now for that? And we're getting to see that through this Steam Deck.
Yeah, I mean,
granted, it's AMD, not NVIDIA, so there's some differences, but it still gives you like a ballpark figure of what technology is available right now.
And, maybe it's kind of like what Switch Pro maybe kind of be when it happens, right? Granted, I think when Nintendo comes out with their hardware that's actually meant to improve visual fidelity and performance significantly, it's going to be great to see the third-party games looking and running better, but what's going to be the real big deal? It's going to be seeing Nintendo games looking and running better, because there is no other place for them to be, right? So that's what's going to kind of be very interesting to see how that sort of plays out. But I want to ask you a question, right? And we talked about it last week, but I want your take. How big of a deal do you think Steam Deck is? Like, do you think it's going to be a game changer? Do you think it's something that's going to sort of eat at the market share a little bit for Switch, or a lot? What do you think?
I don't think
there is a wrong answer, by the way.
Share. I don't think it'll eat at the market share of the Switch. I don't think it's going for the same market. I agree. It's what I said earlier. It's like it fits a very good market where it has all the big third-party games, that experience, while also having some, like PC. Compared to Switch, there's like definitely a ton of different games. So there is overlaps with certain games, but it's not like.
I just think that
it's kind of like the Switch to the Xbox. Like they can both, and the PS5, they can both exist very independently because they don't share the same experiences.
But I don't really see Steam Deck. I'm not saying it's gonna flop, but I also don't think, I don't know what their expectation is in terms of sales, but I don't really see this thing becoming mainstream. I don't see it selling like an Xbox or a PlayStation or a Switch at all.
No.
I think this is gonna be, I'm hesitant to use the word like niche, but it's not going to be like a big deal. There maybe a few million people buy it or something, but I don't know. Maybe I'm mistaken, but I don't think I am, because it's basically what it is. It's just a PC. It's a portable PC. That's what it is. Maybe look at it as like a gaming laptop, but like with an app, but the form factor isn't that of a Switch, you know. And
I don't think it's completely fair to call it a portable PC because it's essentially it's much more like a console in terms of its setup. It uses Steam OS. You're very much locked into that one menu, that one ecosystem.
That's not entirely true from what I heard. You can actually use other operating systems on there and do different things. Like people will be able to create applications and put it on the system. Like it's jailbroken out of the box.
Yes, it's an open source thing.
Yeah.
But that still implies that you get officially supported versions. Like you need drivers and specific things for this in order for it to be fully compatible to its fullest potential. So like if you wanted to run Windows on it, you'd have to assume that they make specific Windows drivers to make it function to its fullest potential. It's not really meant to be for that. Like you can do it technically in the same way that you can hack the Nintendo Switch to run Android, but it's not really what the device is for.
Yeah. Like I imagine that most people who buy a Steam Deck aren't gonna do stuff outside of like the Steam operating system, right?
It's meant to give you much more of a console-like experience. On the go. But
you know, something I also want to kind of talk about is the pricing structure. And a lot of people have looked at Steam Deck and say, wow, Valve gave us a much better, more valuable product. But I think now it is definitely more powerful, right? And I'm pretty sure Valve is doing it at a loss. But there are some misconceptions, I think. So one, I believe off the top of my head, I think the pricing structure is 400, 530, and 650. So there's 3 different SKUs. The 400 one comes with 64 gigabytes of internal storage, but that storage isn't nearly as fast as the other SKUs. The 531 actually has a solid state drive, as does the 650. There's a significant difference in speed there. So games are going to load up a lot faster. That might even impact, like, and then depending, I don't know too much about this, correct me if I'm wrong, Brandon, but that SSD could even impact like some games in terms of like open world games and like how they load up things.
It really shouldn't.
It shouldn't. But well, I guess
shouldn't do anything. I mean, PC games have been targeting normal hard drives.
Okay,
until this generation, and there's still not really any PC games that you need a solid state drive for because they're all optimized around normal hard drives, and even the lowest denominator storage, like even in the cheapest model, is faster than those.
So you don't think the SSD should impact how games run on Steam Deck?
You'll get
the SSD
much
impacts PS5 and Series X, but that's just because they're building games for that. But regardless, though, the SSD is going to impact loading times, right? So you can argue you're going to get a better experience, not just because you can store more games on it, but because because the storage is so much faster. Games are going to load a lot better. So you can argue, so that $400 version isn't the best experience. It's not like the ultimate Steam Deck experience, right? So in order to get the ideal Steam Deck experience, you have to at least spend $530. And the other thing, the Switch has a dock, right, and the grip, right, so it can function as a controller away from the screen. The Steam Deck has that functionality, There is a dock, but it's going to be sold separately, and I think they'll allow third-party docks too.
Yeah, you should be able to use any normal USB-C dock.
But the point is that's also something that's not in there that you have to buy separately. While with the Switch, you get all of that. Now, obviously, the Steam Deck is so much more powerful, but I just want to sort of highlight that it's not like the Steam Deck, it does everything the Switch does, and it's just $50 more expensive. Like, that's not a fair description, right? The Steam Deck is going to run games that the Switch can't really run, and you're going to be able to play them portably. And that's going to work out well, and it has the capability to connect to a PC or a monitor, I think even a television too, right? But you might have to you'll have to get like a third-party controller or something. I don't think Valve is. I mean, Valve might already have their own official controller. You can just
use keyboards and mouse, or you can just use a controller.
Yeah, so there's a lot of options because you can kind of connect whatever you want with that. But those things don't come in the box either, right? So just in terms of like value proposition, like you probably have to spend about $600 compared to what the Switch is $300. You know, so there is definitely like. There's a difference, right?
It depends. I mean, like, most likely you already own a keyboard, you already own a mouse, you probably already own the monitor.
But do you own the dock?
You wouldn't necessarily own would be the dock, and you can buy, like, just a cheap little USB dock with some USB ports on it.
And how much will you think that cost? $20?
I haven't looked at them, but I wouldn't assume they're very expensive.
Sure. But then if you account taxes, like, I'm just saying, like, maybe
$20 to $50.
600 maybe, you know, it does depend, right, on what you need. But the point is that there is definitely like a difference there, right? So like, and this is not me trying to, maybe it is a little bit, but I'm not trying to like make the Steam Deck look bad and say the Switch is better. The Switch is better, but only if you're a Nintendo fan. But the point is that it's just a different sort of market, right? Like
it's going for a different thing. Like you can't just say, I mean, like obviously price per performance, the Steam Deck is way better. You're getting way more performance per dollar than you are out of a Switch. It's not even close. Like the Steam Deck's probably like 20-30 times more powerful than the Switch. It doesn't even compete. They're not even close to being. Yeah, like it's insanely better.
20 to 30?
Not in terms of pure GPU capabilities, but like
I think it's like 1.6 teraflops on which Switch, like 500 or something.
300 to 400 megaflops.
Okay, that's like 4 to 5 times more powerful. And
yeah, pure GPU,
right?
But you got to consider every other facet and everything combined. Like it already has 4 times the memory, and the bandwidth's several times faster. The GPU alone is 4 to 5 times faster. The CPU just completely destroys it in every possible way. It's like literally every single component is like 4 to 5 times faster. So the thing's just is in another class completely. It's not even close, is the point.
Yeah.
It's like 2 generations ahead.
I mean, it's definitely more advanced. Like, there's no denying that. Yeah. You know, it's certainly an exciting thing, but I don't really see it impacting Nintendo in any way. Because, like, we don't even get, like, the modern day, like, AAA third-party games on Switch. We get games that are a little dated. They take a few years to be reworked and they can get on there. A lot of maybe the lesser graphically intensive third-party games can get on there, right? But beyond that, it's basically just a whole bunch of Nintendo games and indie stuff and the occasional sort of cool third-party like title, right? And that's fine. Like that, there's tons of games on Switch. Like there's a strong software lineup there, and that plus the form factor is what, and obviously branding is what is pushing Switch. Steam Deck is, if you're trying to play PC games on the go, that's what that does for you, right? So it is 2 different things. Yeah. Anything else you want to kind of add for that?
it's just exciting to see what that kind of technology that's available, and it's even more exciting when you consider that NVIDIA has something like DLSS, so they can get to that point and you essentially have free like 4 times the It's ridiculous because you can get like double the performance of just one thing.
Yeah.
Like it will make the difference between a game being able to run at 30 frames or 60 frames with just one essentially free feature.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's interesting that like that the Steam Deck has come, because it reminds me of like how things used to be with Nintendo, where Nintendo puts out hardware and then there's some sort of competitor that puts out a similar type of hardware and it's way more powerful. And then there's like a small group of people that are like, yeah, this way more powerful system, better bang for your buck, better hardware, it's gonna have better looking running games. This destroys Nintendo's system. And then what history shows is that the Nintendo system does way better. Like, for example, the Nintendo Entertainment System was not the most powerful system out on the market at the time, but it definitely was the best selling. The Super Nintendo, I think, came out after the Sega Genesis, and their windows were close, but it also wasn't like straight up more powerful either. And then
they're fairly similar. They both have their advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah. But the point is that I think that it was Nintendo waited to release their system. Like they did not rush that out. I think they came out after. Maybe let me double check. I want to fact check myself. There's Sega Genesis release date. Yeah, 1988. Super Nintendo came out in 1991, and they're about the same power. So to my point, you know, and then you look at like the Nintendo DS and the PSP. People were like, "Oh man, the PSP is way more powerful, way cooler screen." It was cool, but the Nintendo DS went on to be the best-selling hardware Nintendo ever put out. So like, and that was probably the best competition Nintendo ever had in the handheld market. The Vita got like canceled early on. The Sony gave up on the Vita like really early on. The 3DS went on to perform really well. You know, so and then obviously you have the Wii, and that sold over 100 million, and it was the best-selling system for that generation. Even though it was basically 2 GameCubes. So you know, there's a history of Nintendo putting out hardware and even coming out with that weaker hardware later, like after the more powerful hardware, and it still like performs really well. Like Nintendo doesn't like that whole power. It's never really been that for them, like since the beginning, since the NES. Like that's not really what they've relied on to sell really well.
Nope. I think that they'll do just fine. I think Steam Deck will find its own little niche, maybe. I think the thing is with something like the Steam Deck, if they hit Wii U numbers, people they'll be happy. They'll be like ecstatic.
Yep. Yeah, I agree.
But, like this thing sold really well because like for what it is, like a portable PC or portable like Steam device, that would be really high sales for that kind of device.
Yeah. I want to read what Narwhal Gaming is saying. I mean, it's media circulation that's implying the Steam Deck is a competitor to Nintendo. Then in quotes, Narwhal says, "We are making the entire Steam library in a portable form factor." Yeah, I mean, it is.
Valve themselves said they're not competing with Nintendo with this device.
Right, that is not the intention, right? But there is that conversation, which is why we're speaking to that. It is interesting, right? Like, so it'll be cool for what it is, for sure. But Brandy, are you ready to move on to the Samus Hunter tweets?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. So let me get to it. There's a few different things that have been said by Samus Hunter. Okay, so this was today, actually. Okay, that's no, I'm not gonna read that part. Let's see here. All right, here we go. Well, let's talk about. Give me a second. Oof. All right. So, on June 22nd, Samus Hunter was talking about Zelda's anniversary. About the Zelda 35th anniversary, they have no other titles with which to celebrate the anniversary. This is a situation that has unfortunately been caused by COVID. They can't use the fiscal year as a celebration, as February the series will be celebrating its 36th anniversary. Everyone will have their own sources, but at the moment I have no evidence of the existence of the ports of Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD, even as a collection. I've always discussed them as a possibility of filler titles in case a month doesn't have a Nintendo title. Wii U ports are mainly for that. After all, they require a few months. Oh, this is actually from June, but this is actually, I thought it was July. Anyway, but it's just basically, literally, I talked about earlier. Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD are being saved for like when Nintendo wants to put them out, and that's pretty much it. Like, there's whenever they come out, that's when they're coming out. I wouldn't really think much of it beyond that. What do you think, Brandon?
Yeah, it just seems like they're just waiting for a time when it makes sense. Could be any time, and we don't know.
Yeah,
But they don't seem to have any specific information that tells them that they're planning an imminent release for those games.
yeah. So we'll just have to be patient. So there's another thing here that was said actually on July 21st. As mentioned on a couple of occasions, don't expect Earthbound released so randomly in the Nintendo Switch Online updates. They have plans to celebrate it in a more important way. Super Mario RPG, on the other hand, is not there yet because Square Enix is in a position that prefers to sell the game. So I think the reason why Samus Hunter was talking about this is because people are complaining about the Nintendo Switch Online offerings. As of late, they've been a lot of games that we've been like, what is that?
Yeah, nobody has ever recognized this game, played it ever.
Right. And I mean, here Samus Hunter's alluding to that there seems to be a plan for Earthbound. What that is, I don't know, but it kind of goes back to the discussion we were having earlier about
Earthbound Remake.
What if that would be sick. I mean, I would be okay with just like a nice Earthbound collection, but I would be ecstatic for like some sort of remake, remaster, sort of. I mean, a remake honestly is what I want. And I mean, recently from some leaks, we got more footage.
Game at all, it needs to be a full remake. I don't think the game needs anything if it's not going to be a remake.
Yeah,
it's perfect how it is. You
just
don't need to touch
release it on Nintendo Switch Online then. But the Mother 3 canceled. The Mother 3 came out on Game Boy Advance, but it wasn't localized for the West. And that's, people have been begging that for a long time. But there was Earthbound 64 was the initial Mother 3, and that was going to be a 3D Earthbound game. Would have been the only 3D Earthbound game. But I mean, granted, if it had come out, maybe we would have seen more after that, right? But it was canceled, and more footage came out recently that just kind of showed off more of the game. Yeah, and it would have been a very impressive, ambitious N64 game. Like, if that hadn't been realized, I wonder where Earthbound would be right now, you know? Like, I know that the writer, I forget his name, doesn't want to continue the story anymore. He's done with the story, but I don't know.
You can be done with it and pass it on to somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, for example,
How
Metroid
can you just
Dread.
be done with an entire universe after 3 titles?
Like, Metroid Dread,
Man.
is going to be the end of the Metroid storyline, but there's going to be more Metroid games, right? So, like, I'm just saying, like, if Earthbound 64 had happened, that series might have jumped to a different level of popularity at the time, you know? And it might have been one of those franchises that gets recurring updates. But it didn't happen. And then for Super Mario
Give me a Mother
RPG, it is
3
something that
remake.
Square is behind. Yeah.
I would like a Mother 3 remake that is still in a pixel art style, but more like a 16-bit instead of whatever Game Boy Advance does. Is this Game Boy Advance 16-bit?
Yeah.
I did not play that system much.
Yeah, NES was 8-bit.
Well, maybe just like better.
Game Boy Advance is basically the equivalent to Super Nintendo, which is 16-bit.
Okay.
So it's
I don't know.
I don't know exactly. I don't remember what Game Boy Advance actually ran at, but it was
indie games
around that.
They'll have like 16-bit art styles, but they still do effects and stuff and have more things on screen than like anything like
Sure.
that the Super NES would not be able to handle.
So
like
you
do
just
something with like
want...
improve the graphics, but still in like a 16-bit style.
Okay, sure. I mean, I'd be down for that. I would like that would definitely like the random battles to be a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, more going on visually, for sure. But continuing on with the Samus Hunter stuff. Here Samus Hunter says, another topic that I haven't discussed as much, more like respond to a few comments throughout the year, is Metroid Prime Trilogy HD. I've never talked too much about it because I repeat, like all ports remastered, generally the work behind it does not require too many multiple post resources, and I find that it has been discussed too much over the years that in the end it becomes almost boring to talk about. I can tell you that it is in Nintendo's plan to release it, and the work behind the remaster will be similar to that of Skyward Sword HD. No new content, almost identical models, better textures, quality of life changes, new UI, and updated controls to play with motion control, but also with traditional ones or both. It simply hasn't released yet because it will be marketed when they start the Prime 4 marketing campaign. I 100% agree with this. Like that, yeah, that's what makes sense. But then Samus Hunter says it's still early, not only because of the release of Dread, but also because the new Prime title is still in full development. The project is totally rebooted at the end of 2018, so don't expect it to release in 2022. While for the trilogy, it's possible, but it's too early to tell. Which kind of goes against Marco Maro, right? Because could we see Prime Trilogy come out the first half of 2022? Sure, but based off what Samus Hunter here is saying, like that's not a 2022 release for Prime Trilogy is also not really set in stone. So I don't know. I mean, it all makes sense. Like Prime Trilogy could come out next year, but there's no guarantee, right? It really comes down to how far Prime 4 is and how close Nintendo wants those to be. I do like the idea of there being like a Metroid game per year for a while, just to keep the franchise relevant. So if Prime 4 is going to be ready in 2023, bring out Prime Trilogy sometime next year. Do that. It'll work out well. Maybe position it as like a summer release, kind of how Skyward Sword HD came out just a few days ago. Or like at this point, like 9 days ago. So I could see something like that happening. I mean, do you think Prime Trilogy is like, could you see it coming out next year, or do you feel like it's some other time?
I think next year's a pretty good bet because I kind of feel like Prime 4 is going to be in 2023 holiday. And I feel like they want to kind of space those out.
Yeah.
Maybe I think Metroid every year would be great, especially if you're trying to keep, relevance of the games go up until Prime 4. Have something coming out at regular intervals every year would be fantastic. So, yeah, I would really hope that we get something of it next year. I also think that giving it space between the two titles is good, because there have actually been some times where you'll have like a remake and then the new game won't sell as well. If they're too close together, I think people get their fill on the older titles, and even though there's this new shiny awesome Prime 4, well, they're just like, yeah, I just played like 80 hours of Prime Trilogy, oh god. So I think they gotta keep that spaced out. And I think having it be about a year apart would be good, instead of like 6 months. or something. You know, whatever.
Yeah,
If it came out
I think
that
I
year.
mean it's 3 games. Like I think people are gonna need
Yeah.
time to play that. So I feel like putting on the same year. I know that could happen, but I feel like maybe it just makes sense to have them be separated by perhaps potentially more than a year. Because the Prime 4, I mean, Prime 4 might not be the big holiday release. Like Nintendo might want something else to come out around then. But I mean, they could conceivably have like Prime 4 in like October and still have something come out like November or December. Like it doesn't just have to be Prime 4 as Nintendo's like big holiday release in 2023, right? But I just want to get to a couple points in terms of what we were discussing earlier, because a few people in the chat, Birdman and Narwhal Gaming, were specifying that or helping telling me that Game Boy Advance is actually 32 bits, but there were some limitations, which is why it looks similar to Super Nintendo, which is 16-bit. Yeah. But then also Paco Salvador added me and said that Shigesato Itoi, the name, I forgot that name, thank you for reminding me, the creator of the Mother series, mentioned he doesn't want to continue the saga because for him that story was done. Yeah, that's what I tried to allude to earlier. Itoi doesn't want to continue the story, but that doesn't mean Nintendo can't, right?
Yeah.
So, you know,
new story out of the same.
or maybe just remake the Mother series in 3D as like
it just remake those games. They could
or
definitely
reimagine them. It would
Yeah.
reimagine them was probably maybe the better thing here, and that would just be retelling the story, right? But in maybe a slightly different way, and
might be what we need to get Mother 3 to actually come over.
Right, where it's reimagined, so the localization, there'll be a localization, but it'll be of a different project, basically. They'll have it'll be similar to the story, but slightly different. But there's a couple other things from Samus Hunter. So on July 18th, Samus Hunter had some things to say about Bayonetta 3. So, given some requests, I published some background on the development of Bayonetta 3. Don't worry, the project is continuing development. It's not canceled. Development began a few months before its reveal. The deals came together after Scalebound's cancellation. Scalebound was also being made by Platinum Games, which they're working on Bayonetta 3. Kamiya and Platinum Games were looking for their next flagship project, presenting several products to partners they worked with, including Nintendo proposing development of Bayonetta 3, which accepted the request and funded the sequel. Obviously, it wasn't the only Nintendo project they were working on. Astral Chain had started to be at a good point. It was expected from the start that Bayonetta 3 would not receive too much visibility until Astral Chain would not come out and its marketing year. Okay. The teaser was decided more at the behest of Platinum Games to assure the fan base that after the portings of the first two titles, the series would continue. Unfortunately, development is taking longer than necessary, so here are the main reasons. An ambitious project. Unlike Astral Chain, where the team from the beginning had designed the game at 30 frames per second, for Bayonetta 3, the team wants to aim 60 frames per second without sacrificing graphics. This has brought complications in the development, even to optimize the engine as much as possible. I mean, if they want this game to look clean and real, like, you know, way better than Bayonetta 2 and be 60 frames per second, that is, you know...
They definitely need to optimize the engine, because on Switch, the game does not hit 720p 60. So, like for Bayonetta 1 and 2, they do not hit 60 very consistently. They hit 60, like they target 60, but they don't hit it.
I got what you're saying.
It's very inconsistent.
I see. Incorrect development time forecast. So this is like another reason why it's longer than people expected. The team had assumed a cycle of 3 years of development, a few months but more than the second title, but Bayonetta 2 was born recycling the base of the first, even at the level design some ideas were already finalized even before. So I guess the point is that because Bayonetta 2 was built directly off Bayonetta 1, that sped things up, and they were incorrect with how long it would take.
I don't think they really changed the engine that much between the two games either.
And I actually cut off a sentence here, so I'll reread that sentence. But Bayonetta 2 was born recycling the base of the first, even at the level design, and some ideas were already ready, finalized even before the Nintendo funds. With Bayonetta 3, most things are recreated from scratch, leading to longer development timelines. COVID issues. I feel like I don't even have to explain that one. But Platinum Games are an independent studio. This means that they had to manage all the internal reorganization issues by themselves, purchasing the infrastructure for smart working. The studio was even shut down for a month with very little organizational progress. Wow. Basically, several months of development were skipped, and all other projects suffered major delays. Nintendo doesn't want to rush the project and will only release it when it meets a certain level of quality. The project is ambitious, and there are also plans to expand the online mode, so the wait will be worth it. In the end, the huge wait is due to a mishandling of the announcement made too early, combined with some management issues related to COVID and too much projects developed. Makes sense?
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah. So Bayonetta 3 is not canceled. They want this to be a really good game, and there have been issues, but that doesn't mean the game isn't coming along. Yeah. That makes sense. I believe that 100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
I could definitely understand them having issues with the engine, because that engine just in general for Bayonetta 1 and 2 is pretty old, and it didn't really scale very well. Like, even for the Xbox ports of it running on like a Xbox One X, it still had trouble hitting 60 FPS. So obviously it didn't scale, the engine didn't scale super well. So it definitely needed a lot of improvements. And there's a lot of new ways of rendering that are just look better while still being much more performant. So I'm sure they wanted to use a lot of things that Nintendo has also been moving to. So I wouldn't be surprised if just changing their engine took a lot more work than they suspected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there could be a lot with that. So, but I mean, once they finally show off the game, I bet it's gonna look pretty sick. So, I'm looking forward to it. But there's one more thing I'll talk about here from Samus Hunter, because it relates to what we were talking about earlier. Samus Hunter was talking about Splatoon 3. So this is what Samus Hunter said on July 15th about Splatoon 3. So that was 10 days ago, right? Yeah. Or 9.5, because are we past midnight already? No, we're not. Okay, so 10 days ago. Anyway, I don't know why a lot of people expect Splatoon 3 in the summertime. Yes, it is a title that reminds of warm weather, but internally the title was expected within the fiscal year, and given the nature of the title, March is the most likely month. Nintendo likes to end the fiscal year with a strong title. There are other commercial motivations, like getting people to keep paying for the online, which is why I actually think that Splatoon 3 is probably going to be shown off more in the September Nintendo Direct, but moving on. Animal Crossing 2020, Monster Hunter Rise 2021, Splatoon 3 in 2022. These are the titles that have brought in so many subscribers in recent years. They are all big online games, and they were all discussed around that renewal time. So that makes sense. To continue on, Smash will end its main support in late September, October. This is basically when we're getting the Nintendo Direct. Around that, when Nintendo will start advertising Splatoon 3 more. Already, it is stating light marketing towards the title. Going forward, will be more present. This post also confirms something coming in that period. I guess Samus Hunter is also talking about Smash, but I mean, it makes sense, right? Like, so. When Smash is done, like, Nintendo's gonna need something that's like, getting recurring updates to sort of hype up the fan base, right? Splatoon 3 to some degree can do that. No, it's not gonna be the Smash hype. It's gonna be Splatoon hype. But they are gonna want something that's like a big sort of game that's kind of getting continual updates. And Animal Crossing certainly is doing that, but it's kind of a different style. As is Splatoon, but Splatoon is more of the course-centric, while Animal Crossing is more on the mainstream side of the spectrum, So for sure, it all makes sense. It's just kind of funny because most of the things that Samus Hunter says are all things that I agree with. Like, they're all, like, I feel like the most logical sort of perspective. Now, that doesn't mean Splatoon 3 has to come out March 2022. It just sort of makes sense. But, if it comes out summer, that's still fine. But I do feel like Nintendo will want to start talking about it in September because of the online situation. So maybe even if Splatoon 3 doesn't come out by March, like, I feel like we at least get a test fire by that point. So those are kind of my thoughts right there. I believe it. But Brandon, I mean, you basically said the same thing earlier. Like we both think that it makes sense around that time.
Yeah, I've been saying it for a long time. I think that being a March game would make a lot of sense. I mean, they showed it off so early last year that I feel like why would they have shown it that early if it's going to be a summer game? It just doesn't make too much sense. They need to show it then.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, it's just why that early, right? But let's check on the chat here. Talbron, do you guys think we will see that Demon Slayer game on the Switch? I am a fan of the anime. I think I saw something on that, but I didn't even pay attention because I don't even know what this is.
I don't pay attention to anime games because they're usually garbage.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we're getting Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball Kakarot was confirmed for Switch, right? So
yeah. That's two. We have Dragon Ball, that Dragon Ball
Fighters.
fighting game on Switch.
Yeah, so
yeah.
It's a similar thing. Like, it's the kind of game that could be brought to Switch. It just hasn't been brought yet. So if the game is successful and it's worth, if the game is even a little successful, I would say that it's worth bringing it to Switch, right? So there's that. Now you could also make the argument, because let's say the game bombs, and they're like, oh well, if we bring it to Switch, you might have another chance at making a profit here, right? I just think that when they started development, they weren't ready to start making it for Switch. So they'll have to probably, rework it for Switch. But yeah, I'm looking at the game. It's cool, but it doesn't look like it's mind-blowing visually. It's just, yeah, this is totally doable. Yeah.
It's an anime-based game.
Right.
They're not usually the most graphically intensive, highest budget games ever. Dragon Ball Fighters is probably the highest fidelity anime game, period. The game actually looks pretty impressive.
Dragon Ball Fighters is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The game looks dope.
It is so good. I mean, it's made by Arc System Works, right?
I don't know who made it.
I could be remembering the name. Oh, I could be mistaken with the name, or not. I'm not sure. No, I'm right. Yeah, Arc System Works. They make some really good cell shaded fighting games. If you've seen Guilty Gear, that it's so visually impressive. It kind of makes you question reality. It's very good looking. But just moving on the chat here. I think the music I'm playing right now is actually the background music right now is for Metro Prime 2. I think it's Torvus Bog. Or I could be. I mean, I think if I'm mistaken, it's because Torvus Bog is a reworking of Brinstar. So, it might be Brinstar. Anyway, ASAP Rel, do you think Nintendo needs one more game for this holiday? Do I think they need it? I think they're gonna be fine. Is it gonna be the year where they just completely, outdo the competition? I mean, they probably will, just because they have so much momentum. I don't know. There isn't a game that matches the ambition of Halo Infinite, right? But also, I guess they don't really need to. I think the thing is that because of COVID, everyone has had everything pushed back. So because of that, the lineup of games this year, while none of them look like huge ambitious projects, a lot of those huge ambitious projects from other companies have also been pushed up as well. So right now, with the content that Nintendo has sort of lined up for this year, it actually looks pretty solid in comparison to everyone else. And it's not a situation where one game on its own stands above all the others. It's just like they have a lot of games that are high up there in most people's list for games they want to play this year. Like, I think, especially for Nintendo fans, like if you're a longtime Nintendo fan, you probably have an interest in WarioWare. You probably have an interest in Mario Party. You probably have an interest in Metroid Dread. You probably are at least somewhat curious about other Nintendo fans raving about Advance Wars, right? And then Pokemon Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl is the Gen 4 remake. Now, I think the marketing behind that and the aesthetic behind it sort of diminished how cool that is. But I think once they start talking more about that game, it's going to excite people even more. And then Legends Arceus is coming out in January, so it's like not even like that much removed from the year. So like there's a good lineup. So I don't think it's needed, but a lot, like I said, yeah. Go on.
It definitely helps that Sony's already delayed God of War.
Yeah.
And they might delay
Horizon
Forbidden West. We did not get a release date for that game, or even, I think, a reconfirmation for this year when they showed that back.
Right,
before
they
E3.
haven't officially delayed it either, which is
no, they've not.
Peculiar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we'll have to wait and see if they even have that as their holiday game or not.
Mm-hmm. But if Sony comes out with Horizon and Microsoft has Halo Infinite, it will be a situation where people are like, oh, well, what does Nintendo have? Pokemon Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl and Metroid Dread, and both games are going to sell really well. So, and actually, they're Shin Megami Tensei 5. Like, that's actually a big deal. Shin Megami Tensei 5 is a pretty good-looking, fairly large-scope RPG. So don't sleep on that. It's a good game. Talbron asks, so is there hope for Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess? Yes, there's hope, but if you mean hope in terms of it coming out this year, no. Is it?
Probably
but
not.
Can it conceivably come out next year? Yeah, but it's one of those things where I think it might be safe to just sort of
stop
patient.
hoping for it. Be patient. And when it comes, when you see the announcement trailer, you can be like, oh, cool. And until then, just wait, because we have no idea.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Exactly. Brandon's right. Just looking through a chat here. Freaky Deaky. Monolith Soft is kinda second party Nintendo, and in 2022 they will likely bring either a new IP, Xenogears Remake, or Xenoblade 3. Thoughts? Well, firstly, there is no kinda second party. Monolith Soft is 100% Nintendo. Do not make that mistake. Now,
first party.
They are first party. They are owned by Nintendo. Anything Monolith Soft does is Nintendo. Like, legally, they are 100% Nintendo because Nintendo wholly owns Monolith Soft. But it was once upon a time that Monolith Soft was not owned by Nintendo, which is why some people still say, oh, it's third party or like second party because Nintendo pays for it and they usually work with them. You know, it's kind of like Game Freak, right? Like Game Freak is second party, but because they can still work for other companies, not just Nintendo, which they do sometimes. Monolith Soft will not work for other companies. Monolith Soft is Nintendo, but it wasn't always 100% Nintendo, which is why there's that confusion. But going past that, though, will the first-party games of a potential like Xenoblade 3 come out maybe next year or a new IP? I think there's a good chance, at least an announcement for one of them.
The timing seems to be right.
Yeah. Now, a Xenogears remake, that's interesting because that's
like who.
The rights.
I know that
it's a rights issue.
The rights are weird. Does Square own any of the rights to Xenogear and Xenosaga?
No, I mean they could have a partnership where they, are given access to that and are allowed to remake it, right? So that would be like that. Maybe you could argue is like a second-party project, or it'd be more like a third-party collaborate. I don't know what you call it, but that would require some licensing things, to get to be passed. But anyway, I do think Monolith Soft has a project that is nearing announcement. Conceivably, they could announce it during the September Nintendo Direct, and I'm assuming there will be a September Nintendo Direct, because there usually is. So, you know, they may announce it, because normally when there's a September Direct, they have like 1 or 2 big game announcements to sort of excite people for the next year. So they may do that. They may show off the next Xenoblade or whatever Monosoft is working on. They may show off Donkey Kong, right? Or they'll just focus on what we already know about. They may talk about more about Splatoon 3, confirm it for March 2022, show off more Legends Arceus, show off Rabbids Kingdom Battle, Sparks of Hope, and maybe confirm that release date. Like, there's a few different options there, but I think we've
been known to get information for games all the way up until like October of the next year.
Say it again.
We've gotten confirmation in September Directs for games that come out pretty late into the next year.
Yeah, you're right.
Like Luigi's Mansion 3.
Exactly. It was like announced like 13 months in advance, which would be very similar to our prediction for Splatoon 3. So, true. You know, February to March of the next year versus September to October of the next year. So there's a good chance, but I'm not saying expect a Monosoft announcement in September, but no. I'd be surprised if we do not see one by the end of next year. Like, I think, you know, within 14 months of today. Yeah, within 14 months of today, we will see the next project from Monosoft. That's the window I'm putting out there.
Sounds good.
Yeah. ASAP Bro. Samus Hunter keeps hinting at a Monosoft project. She actually says they're working on 2 projects.
That would not surprise me.
They're
working on a ton of projects.
They have several studios. They are working on multiple projects. Some of those projects are helping out other
Blade and the new IP at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. That I 100% agree. There's no argument there. The only question is which one we see first. Brandon and I have been expecting the new IP first because they were hiring for that back in 2017.
They started that first.
Right. So, you know, but timing-wise, I mean, Xenoblade 2 finished in 2017, so, like, I don't know.
Yeah. Torna was like a whole half of a Xenoblade game, though.
Right, and they also did Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, which also had Future Connected in there, so... Yeah. Birdman. No, Square owns rights to Xenogears, so Nintendo and Square will have to meet each other to make an agreement. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Christopher Mendez. Andres, I think it's more likely that Wind Waker HD plus Phantom Hourglass will release for $60 and Twilight Princess HD with the amiibo content added at $60. Wind Waker and Phantom Hourglass were copywritten at the same time. Twilight Princess wasn't copywritten until several months later.
I'm gonna say this: copyrights 99.99999% of the time mean absolutely nothing. Just how it is. Copyright renewals hardly ever mean anything to anybody except the fact that they want to keep their IPs and not have them sold on the open market.
Yeah, there are very rarely hints to a project being in development. It doesn't. If Nintendo copyrights something, it means that they do not want to lose the rights to that, right? And that can mean that they're working on something, but it also but what it really means is they might work on something for that at some point in the future. That's really what it means, right? So
at the very least, they don't want somebody else working on that.
Right. They don't want anyone else to take that name, because it is important to them. So, but with that said, I have a hard time seeing. I mean, if you end up being right, props to you. But I have a hard time seeing Phantom Hourglass coming packaged with Wind Waker HD. just because the game's visually, I mean, I understand that it's a sequel and it's trying to mock the style, like match the style, but for a DS. But visually, it's just there's such a substantial difference between the two.
Yeah. And that game really relies on touch controls. Like,
Yeah.
it worked on the Wii U because you had the gamepad, but they'd have to completely redo how the game controls.
Yeah, completely. And you basically, I mean, you probably have to remake the game. But even if you remake the game, its style is so different from Wind Waker. Because, I mean,
Yeah.
it.
You could do that. I did make a video once on them just remaking it with, like, essentially the Wind Waker engine. Just make a 3D version of that game. It's not gonna happen, but what if it did? That obviously wouldn't be packaged with Wind Waker. I'm just saying.
That would just be
pretty awesome.
Basically, be a new Zelda game. I mean, it would. That's what it would be. Yeah, I mean, it would be awesome, right? But it's one of those things that why would Nintendo do that, right? Like, if they're gonna,
it's not gonna happen.
If they're gonna focus their efforts to make a new Zelda, they're gonna make a new Zelda. They're probably not gonna rebuild Phantom Hourglass so it can play like Wind Waker.
But if they did, hell yes.
It'd be super cool. Now, could they repurpose the controls and spruce up the visuals in a sort of pseudo 2D remake style, kind of like Link's Awakening? They could do that, because it's, I mean, Phantom Hourglass is like not entirely top down because there's like the boss fights and the sailing.
Yeah, it's like a full 3D perspective on
right.
the top.
Yeah, so I would classify Phantom Hourglass as basically a 2D Zelda game. But they would have to rework it a lot because it's touch controls, right? So maybe you could use like the right stick to draw, or motion controls, or the touchscreen if you're playing in portable mode. But
I think you could make the basic combat would work fine with buttons, because touching is pretty much what you could just do with the B button or something to attack. Most of the attacks, I mean, it uses gestures, but you can just remap those to buttons pretty much. I guess for things where you need to like draw, like
you
on
can
a
use a
door
control
where you need
stick.
to draw a symbol, yeah, you could just use, or just gyro would work fine for that.
No control stick.
There's ways you could do it, but you'd have to fundamentally rethink.
It's just because you have to draw. There's some
plays.
things that are a little It's a little. It's doable, but it would. I mean, if they can make Skyward Sword HD work, they could probably make Phantom Hourglass work. So
it'd be beyond just a remaster. I think you'd probably have to reinvent parts of the game. And obviously, you don't have two screens anymore, so inevitably, you have to reinvent how the game looks and functions.
Yeah.
On a conceptual basis.
Yeah. I would like to see that though. And I mean, it would be really cool. Like, I would actually love to see like a remake like we're talking about for Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks would be really fun. I would like to see that. But I see Gnarl Gaming is going to sleep. Thank you for coming by. Your presence was enjoyed. Take care. Thank you for the good wishes. Let's see here. And Nishant Tucker, how would Phantom Hourglass play on the Switch docked? Well, you wouldn't have to use a touch. Yeah, well, I guess it's basically what we just talked about. Like, you would have to use motion controls with the right stick to kind of map some of the touch controls. And to your point, some of them would just have to be mapped to buttons, like the sword attack. Like, there was nothing crazy about those. The
way it looked when it was displayed, I'm pretty sure, like, to make that work in a package that is sellable, that feels polished, they need to remake the game. They would know there wouldn't be a way to just remaster it, because just the nature of having the two different screens, and just even beyond touch, the fact that you'd have to display two screens on one screen on your TV would look like it would look horrible. Yeah. I think they would just need to remake it to do anything that resembles a polished product.
Yeah. Another thing to point out in terms of copyrights, because I've seen Christopher Mendes bringing up Spirit Tracks not getting copywritten. I would have to look it up, but a lot of it comes down to just like when they need to refresh that. Like if it's not if their
Yeah.
current copyright isn't
Copyrights
expiring,
don't last forever; they expire.
right? But basically, if it's not expiring, you don't have to update it. So
No.
yeah, they don't have to be renewed yet because they're still going. So I would have to look at the timing
Sometimes
of
they
that,
come
but-
with ideas and they copyright them just in case one day they
Mhm,
decide to do it.
mhm.
Doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily mean anything.
Yeah. Yeah, but I do like the idea of seeing Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks coming at some point. I never even played Spirit
Yeah.
Tracks, so I would love to be able to play that.
Star Treks is
Yeah.
pretty great. It's definitely the better of the two DS games.
For what I did to play.
Hmm.
But is there any final thoughts or anything else you want to bring up, Brandon, before we call it an evening?
No, I think we covered pretty well.
I think we did. I think we got to pretty much everything. Yeah. Yep. Well, I guess that's it. I guess we're good. We'll see what happens this week. Oh, actually, I just realized. So this might be. I might not be able to do the podcast for a while, guys.
Oh,
Yeah. We'll see. Cause like, so I'm going on vacation next week, and my vacation is going to be for 3 weeks. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to stop making videos for 3 weeks. There will be videos, and I'll try and do the podcast. But for example, next Sunday, I'm not going to be able to do the podcast. So either A, I'm going to do a Q&A later in the week, or B, I do an earlier podcast. It kind of depends on how things shake out. Like, would people be interested in me doing the podcast on Saturday? Although if I did it on Saturday, I guess I'd be competing with Spawncast. But I mean, people do. It'd be fine.
I think next Saturday is my birthday.
You want to go on the podcast for your birthday? Yeah, I don't know. It seems unlikely. But don't worry. I'm gonna. So like.
Yeah, it is my birthday.
Soon? It's birthday soon, my friend.
Yeah, less than a week.
I will. Oof. Man. Will I be able to do the podcast on the 8th? Because I'll be flying to another country. Like
Whoa,
hours from
another
that
country.
point. Yeah. It's a family thing. So I'm gonna go to Colombia. Yeah.
Is that in Britain?
Colombia.
Where is that?
Colombia is in South America.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I said Colombia, but I said it like it has a U. It's COLO, Imbia. But I don't know. But don't worry. The schedule, we'll figure it out. There will be videos. I'll try and do some Q&As or like a podcast out of Sunday. So we'll see what happens. But content's coming. Don't worry. We'll make it work. But yeah.
Somehow, some way.
Some way. And make sure to wish Brandon a happy birthday. His birthday is coming up. We are less than a week away. And
maybe I'll do a little stream from my phone. Just chat with people on my birthday.
yeah.
Maybe. It depends on what I have to do that day. I have no idea.
Yeah. Brandon's channel is linked in the description below, guys. So if he does that, check his channel out so that way
Might not be in the state of mind for that to be possible, depending on what plans I have.
we shall see. Yeah. Freaky Deaky's asking, will Nintendo expand their online service soon? I think that there will be some sort of announcement around September, but we'll see.
Yeah.
But anyway, guys, thanks so much for listening and watching. If you could leave a like, that'd be appreciated. Watch my other videos, that'd be appreciated. If you could check out Brandon, it'd be definitely appreciated as well. But have a good night. Take care.
See you guys.